Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Lawcast. This time, we're covering perhaps the most epic WrestleMania of them all. It's a WrestleMania just dripping in history. It's Steve Austin's last match. It's Hulk Hogan's last WrestleMania. It's the crowning moment for Brock Lesnar. It's Shawn Michaels' return to WrestleMania. It's so many things, and somehow it all happened one Sunday afternoon in Seattle in 2003. Cush, what'd you think of this one?
Well, first things first. This is going to be a long one, boys and girls, so
Yeah,
settle
strap
in
in.
and bust them if you got them. So I'm getting ready for it right now. This is going to be a hell of a long conversation because there it is. Hey, toasted across the phones. This is basically every single match we have to go into detail about what was going on because while I do like this show, and in the context of all the WrestleManias that we've covered up to this point, I think this is probably the second best one ever to this point as a total show. And I say that knowing that that's not high praise necessarily, because other than 17, I don't think there's a WrestleMania before this that has more than like two good matches on it.
No,
But like this,
the good matches were in pretty short supply before this.
yeah. But this is a show that could have been so much better than what it is because it feels like every match up and down the card is just slightly wrong in some way. Either the way they're coming at it is wrong or they're forced into like kind of a messed up scenario because of things that happen. Nothing is quite clicking the way that it ought to be. And this, I think that contributes heavily to this winding up being a gigantic disappointment as a moneymaker.
Yeah, it's just a very crazy and tumultuous time for the company. If you think about all the things that happened from WrestleMania 18 to WrestleMania 19, we've split the roster into two different shows. They put the belt on Hulk Hogan, they took it off him a couple weeks later. Steve Austin walked out. Brock Lesnar got the rocket strapped to him. The Rock's movie career really started to take off. Hulk Hogan quit the company. They went through kind of a disastrous fall of TV with Katie Vick and Brock turning face and losing the title. And there's also some great triumphs in that Shawn comes back. Shawn wins the title. That's amazing. And we come to this WrestleMania, and as a fan going into it, I'm thinking, well, the good times are back. Like
Right.
Austin's back, Rock's back, Hogan's back. We've got all the stars, and we've got the young studs. And we come out of this show, and all the stars are gone, and all the new guys are broken, it feels like. And it's
Yeah.
just a night, like the ensuing year will be a nightmare.
If you've been listening to us for a long time, you know that I've been doing this project where I've been watching every Raw and SmackDown from 1996 to present. It just so happened that I got to the point here where I literally, our show caught up to where I was in that process. So I've watched literally every single Raw and SmackDown from 1996 to this exact moment. And it's important that I say that to tell you that if you were watching the shows up until like, let's say February, you would have such a good feeling about where this company was. Brock Lesnar is a star. Booker T's gotten so incredibly over. Edge is like obviously like just like B right behind Lesnar in terms of potential star power, and he's come on super strong. There's so much going on. The women are starting to pop. The tag division is on fire. Shawn Michaels is back. Like even people doing nothing in the mid card, like Jericho, have the potential to have special performances. It feels like probably this is the best it's been since 2000 in terms of just like the card is stacked with over people from top to bottom.
This is, I think, by a significant margin, the best roster in wrestling history. The closest, WCW in the late '90s was loaded, but not like this. This is incredible. I mean, we talked about the guy. You look at the guys in the mid card, and it's like Jericho, Edge, Christian, Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit. Like that's their mid card, and those guys are all in their prime superstars, and they're 8 through 14 on the depth chart here.
Yeah, in terms of pure talent, I would say that the roster they had maybe like 3 years ago is better than this one. But in terms of like everyone being over and established and just like on top of their game, this blows everything out of the water. Like just watching TV from week to week, every 6-minute match on SmackDown is like the best match you've ever seen in your fucking life. It'd just be like throwaway matches between like Benoit and Guerrero for no reason. Like we were so spoiled. But just like you said, when we come out of this show, all of the top guys are gone. And they just leave Brock Lesnar alone. Like in Triple H alone. And this just like swamp of young guys who they've broken basically in a 2-month span. Edge is hurt. Rob Van Dam has been buried. Booker T has been buried. Kurt Angle is hurt. Everyone's gone. And it's horrible. And it never recovers.
The savior is supposed to be Goldberg, who's coming in, which was another thing to be excited about. They totally screw him up. I mean, by WrestleMania 20, he's finished with wrestling. Like, they have broken his spirit and will to be a wrestler in the span of a year.
Yeah, like Goldberg and Scott Steiner were supposed to revitalize this place in 2003.
Nope.
By like SummerSlam, they're both jokes.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned, this one's in Seattle, which is definitely a change of pace as a host city. Definitely smaller city than typically hosts WrestleMania. Out there on the West Coast. I don't really know why they picked Seattle. Do you have any particular thought on that?
I really don't. I remember at the time everyone thought it was a pretty fucking weird selection too. I don't know if they just thought that they would get like a Canadian audience over too. Like this is before WrestleMania strictly had to be in destination cities so that they could, because they knew that they were bringing in like hundreds of thousands of people. This wasn't really that. So they just felt they could go into like any metropolis and draw. But again, like they still, aside from 17, which they knew exactly what they were going to have, it still feels like they feel like WrestleMania is pretty much just a really big show. It's not like a gigantic, like, commerce mover like it is today. They don't really understand it that way. So like it's on a baseball field, but like beyond that, like it's not.
That's less pressure that it's a baseball stadium instead of a football stadium because they only need to draw 50,000 instead of 70,000.
But yeah, I don't know if like the city of Seattle like paid them or like
probably.
If they're probably doing a bidding process during.
It's a monster event for Seattle. Seattle, I don't believe, has ever hosted the Super Bowl, and I don't think they will because they have an outdoor stadium and the weather is kind of funky in Seattle in January. They hosted the Final Four back when it was at the Kingdome back in the day, but not a big event city.
No, and like they'll go back and forth like this with like destination city and like random cities, and I think Detroit's the last one that they do where it's just like, all right, everyone after this has to be gigantic. We're not doing this anymore.
Yeah, that's the thing is I think coming out of this there was a perception that part of the reason the show didn't do well was because it was in Seattle and Seattle's not a big enough media market, and that led to them running. I think they were always going to do New York for 20 because they wanted to do WrestleMania 20 at the Garden for the history. But then 21 is in Chicago, or 21's in LA, and 22's in Chicago. And they go back to arenas because they don't have stadiums to run for those shows.
And I think it's really running the Orange Bowl that really turns it around, because that was basically a dumpster by the time that they decided to run it for 24.
No, 24 is in Orlando, not Miami.
Oh, what am I thinking of?
Well, the Orange Bowl was 28 was the Rock's comeback was Miami, but yeah, 24 was Orlando.
But still, like that was the first time
that was the first outdoor WrestleMania since 9. First one in an outdoor football stadium ever.
Yeah, and they run like a stadium and it's huge and successful, and I think that's the point where they realize like, oh, we can just do this every time. We don't have to.
But my response to the thing about like it's not a big enough city, like their biggest drawing WrestleManias to this point had been in Detroit, WrestleMania 3, and Houston, WrestleMania 17, which like while they're big cities, they're not media supermarkets. They're not, destination tourist cities. Like maybe the wrestling is the actual important part of how you're going to draw.
Well, if you're just throwing in like the biggest drawing shows they've ever done, San Antonio's another one of them.
Yeah.
San Antonio. Texas. What the fuck?
Yeah. So I don't really buy the explanation that like the show being in Seattle hurt it. That
No.
doesn't make a lot of sense to me. That feels like an excuse because they didn't want to just like own it that like we didn't do a good job booking this show. It was a mistake to promote Vince and Hogan so heavily. I mean, honestly, if you're gonna say what got the most promotion on the way into this, it's probably a split between Rock and Austin and Vincent Hogan, and that seems kind of nuts that really Vincent Hogan was the most promoted match on SmackDown.
Here's the bizarre thing. Vince and Hogan, two 50-something-year-old men, were the only two people who could get physical with each other going into the matches.
Yeah, because everybody else is messed up.
This is a bizarrely heatless show because for like the months beforehand, first of all, the 6 months of TV going into this are some of the worst television in the history of WWE or anything.
Everything after SummerSlam is a disaster. So that's kind of the most recent show from this period we've covered is SummerSlam 2002, which was an amazing triumph, like one of the greatest WWE pay-per-views of all time. And after that, everything is fucked.
And it sucks because like there were a good 3 months in there where they were literally putting on some of the best television anyone's ever seen.
Some of my favorite stuff ever.
It's white hot, everything. They're hitting on all these great ideas, and every character feels part of like this established universe, and they're all interacting with each other in a way they've never really done before. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. But then we get into like the Katie Vick times, and we get into the Brock Lesnar's fucking The Undertaker's mistress and his wife times. And
it's a real shame that doesn't have a shorthand like Katie Vick. I feel like that should be more infamous than it is.
Yeah.
So if no one remembers this, The Undertaker and Brock Lesnar are feuding, and like Paul Heyman brings out this woman who says that she is The Undertaker's mistress, and Taker's like, well, yeah, I know her. I banged her 7 years ago or something like that. And then it turns out she's actually Brock's girlfriend now. I didn't remember that part.
Well, it turns out that like she's just using The Undertaker to try to get back into the business or something like that. But then Brock becomes really obsessed with Sarah, and he starts like calling Sarah on the phone, and like he like enters their house and like puts his hands on her and like
he like literally like puts her up against the wall, puts his hand on her stomach, and is like, what are you gonna do if I hurt your husband so badly he can't provide for you and your baby?
Which I would like to point out is one of the most heelish things it's possible for a human to do.
Threatens a pregnant woman.
And that's why that match actually has a ton of heat when he goes into Hell in a Cell. They turn him babyface like 2 weeks after he threatens a pregnant woman.
The Brock Lesnar face turn is incredibly ill-advised. And then he loses the title to the Big Show.
To pants-wearing, flat-top Big Show.
Why was Big Show wearing jeans? What the hell was going on?
Because they were trying to change his look up. Main event Big Show's gotta wear jeans.
That is not a thing. Is that a worse look than the like ridiculously tight singlet he was wearing before that?
Yes, honestly, I would argue that he looked more like the Big Nasty with his flat top and his jeans and his weird mustache with no goatee.
He looks disgusting.
And the entire time he's champion, Lesnar just jobs him out on every show.
There's like, oh, it's cool that Lesnar can throw Big Show around. Let's have him do that every episode of SmackDown.
And so then Lesnar just like gets the belt back. Or no, Angle gets the belt.
Yeah. Big Show holds the belt for like 3 weeks. He loses it to Angle at Armageddon. And then Angle goes heel, but I don't really even remember like what happens that causes that.
Angle's just always kind of... I mean, he never was a
He never really turned face. Yeah, the whole thing with Big Show. I mean, Lesnar doesn't really turn face until Heyman turns on him, really. But yeah, they do a couple of kind of weird heel versus heel matches in there. And so to back up, what's going on Raw?
Yeah.
So on the Raw after SummerSlam, Brock Lesnar reveals that he's signed an exclusive contract with SmackDown, and he will only be defending the WWE title on SmackDown. So Raw needs a world title now. They've decided that both shows need a world title in order for their house shows to draw, so got to have 2 belts instead of 1. Me, I hate two belts. I think there should only be one world champion. What's your take on that?
I also dislike two belts, but I also feel like a show is genuinely rudderless if it doesn't have a champion to go after. A large part of the criticism of Brock Lesnar has been when he's the champion, there's really no champion on the show. And like they've never really found a workaround without just having like two champions.
I
So
thought
I
that summer, The Undertaker's title reign in particular was a model for how that can work, where on SmackDown he was feuding with The Rock and Kurt Angle, and then on Raw he would have these little side feuds with like Tommy Dreamer and Jeff Hardy, and it produced some really good TV.
yeah, but from a writing perspective, that must have been fucking difficult to put together, honestly. Like there's no way that they had an easy time of doing all those matches.
No. So Eric Bischoff creates the World Heavyweight Championship, pulls it out of a briefcase, hands it to Triple H. Triple H is your Raw World Champion.
Yay.
Triple H goes on to defend the title at Unforgiven against Rob Van Dam. He wins when Ric Flair turns heel and joins up with him. That leads us to the debacle Triple H Kane feud, which features Triple H humping a corpse. Katie
Look,
Vick.
we can't, for our sanity's sake, we can't delve too much into the Katie Vick situation. Or maybe on like a future Patreon special, we'll just litigate the entire Kane backstory.
God.
But we can't do that.
Kane was so hot on the way in there. Him and Hurricane are the tag team champions, and that's surprisingly awesome.
Yeah.
He wins the Intercontinental title. He manages to defend the tag belts by himself in a 4-way TLC match because
That was
Hurricane
awesome.
gets taken. Yeah, on Raw, it's like the teams are bizarre. It's like him against Bubba and RVD, Jeff Hardy and somebody.
No, it was
And
Hardy and
Jericho-
RVD.
Hardy
So
and RVD, Bubba and Spike,
Spike, yeah.
and Vitamin C, Christian and Chris Jericho.
Just truly the weirdest fucking.
It's an awesome match. And Kane wins all by himself in this incredible triumph. And then Triple H comes out and says, "You're a murderer, Kane.
You're
You
a
killed
murderer."
Which it was a good like hook at the time. It was like, what the hell is he talking about? What did Kane do?
And it's totally believable. It's just like,
Yeah.
oh, you can pretend like you're a happy, well-adjusted dude now, but we know you're a fucking murderer. And it's like,
basically Frankenstein's monster. He probably didn't mean to do it, whatever he did.
exactly. But like, it's compelling. Like, oh shit, did he do something? Did he really do it? Oh fuck.
No.
Great.
Turns
Nope.
out he was at a party. How was Kane at a party? That doesn't. I thought Kane was raised in a basement by Paul Bear and
Say, who invited the weird burn guy to the party?
Yeah. Again, we said we weren't going to delve too far into this. Triple H, they do the infamous segment where Triple H humps the mannequin corpse of Katie Vick.
So that happens.
And then Triple H beats Kane at No Mercy. And then at Survivor Series, we do the first ever Elimination Chamber match. Triple H defends against Kane, Rob Van Dam, Booker T, Chris Jericho, and Shawn Michaels. Listen to that talent I just listed off. They're all in one match, the very first Elimination Chamber match. It's not that great of a match because they don't really know how to work the Elimination Chamber yet. They literally laid eyes on it for the first time when they got to the arena that day. But what a piece of history in Madison Square Garden as Shawn Michaels walks out the World Heavyweight Champion in one of the ultimate Cinderella stories.
And one of the biggest pops of that era too. Like, just like the fans were so ready for that.
I mean, if I'm hitting on something here, they blew through all their WrestleMania moments throughout 2002.
Yes.
Having Hogan win the title, Shawn's return to the ring, Shawn winning the title, Lesnar winning the title, Lesnar losing the title, Lesnar turning face. These things are all stories that you could have built WrestleMania around, and they did all of them before they got there.
And so by the time we actually get to WrestleMania, none of this is the stuff that you wanted to see. This is like Rock and Austin. Okay, that's cool. Lesnar versus Angle. All right, that's cool. But Triple H versus Booker T. None of those, like, if this is Triple H versus Shawn Michaels and Brock
It really
Lesnar.
should have. It wouldn't have been hard to keep them apart. Like Shawn got put out at Survivors or at SummerSlam. He didn't need to come back for Survivor Series. He could have come back at the Rumble and won the Rumble as a surprise entrant.
Or when he wins the title, just have him keep it for longer than like 2 fucking weeks.
Yeah. So Shawn ends up losing the title back to Triple H at Unforgiven in a ridiculous clusterfuck 3 stages of hell match where it's a street fight and then a cage match and then a ladder match.
Which
Really
is
really overstuffed that one.
I do love that match though. Like it's a very good match. It's just
The only person who likes Triple H and Shawn Michaels wrestling each other.
Look, I've always liked all of their matches. I understand that they're ponderous wank fests between two people who are so
Those
in
guys
love with
had
each
like
other.
100 matches and 2 of them were good.
Yeah, but the two were so okay. You got at least got to agree with me on that Hell in a Cell match, right?
No, that's not the. No, the one I like is the one in San Antonio on Raw where it looks like Shawn won the belt, and then it turns out it was a double pin.
All right, that one's fine. Okay, so just because the Hell in a Cell match was 46 minutes, nobody loves it.
Yeah, that's understandable. I do not need to see. I don't really need to see anybody wrestle for 47 minutes, but not those guys when they're having their 10 millionth match and they're punching each other on their knees and no one cares.
Yeah, and I totally get that. Like, trust me when I say that I've heard from a million people that like people were not bought in on that feud. I was personally bought in on that feud, but I totally get why other people weren't. But at the same time, like, all you got to do is prolong it like a little bit, and at least that's a match with a ton of heat coming into this show, you know?
Yeah, Shawn winning the title absolutely could have closed this WrestleMania. That would have been an amazing WrestleMania moment.
He comes back, Triple H says, I'll never give you a match, and then he wins the Rumble and forces the issue. That's perfect. That's exactly what you want.
At the beginning here, it was very much like they were match by match with Shawn. It was just like, he's coming back, he's going to do the one match. Okay, he'll do the Elimination Chamber. Okay, he'll win the title, he'll drop it back to Triple H at the next pay-per-view. And then it's like, ooh, he kind of wants to work with Jericho. He'll work with Jericho, and maybe that'll be it. And then he ends up sticking around for 7 years.
It's also very easy for us to like relitigate now, like what should have happened. At the time, you've got to remember that Shawn Michaels, even though he has that amazing match at SummerSlam, and his matches don't suck, but he's not himself yet. Like, not until this match here with Jericho.
This brings back the Heartbreak Kid.
And it's not just Shawn Michaels had been wrestling like pale imitations of his older matches, and it felt that style already feels dated in 2002. You know what I mean? Like, it hasn't been that many years, but he's wrestling. Basically, he's just going through the motions as 90s Shawn Michaels. It isn't until this match with Jericho that something new comes.
And he's got that awful haircut. And at first he had he didn't have any tights to wear, so he was wearing like these really terrible gear.
Yeah. And they were letting him wear like Jesus shirts on TV and weird shit like that. Like, it was a very weird time for him.
Things were just a little off.
So it's not as easy as just plugging him in. I'm sure he even wouldn't have been comfortable being in the main event.
So then Raw's in a rough spot, but it's okay because our savior has arrived, because the big bad booty daddy himself, Big Papa Pump, Freakzilla, Big Papa Pump's your hookup, holla if you hear me, Scott Steiner has arrived in WWE to save us all.
And can we just say, I know that when you just heard that, in your head you scoffed. You were just like, oh, yeah, fucking Scott Steiner and his stupid bullshit, like he sucked. But you need to understand that before that first Triple H match, it was a total smashing success.
When he showed up at Survivor Series at Madison Square Garden as a surprise, the crowd lost its damn mind.
Literally, every week he just comes out and just beats somebody's ass. Like, he beats up like Jamie Noble, he beats up like just Kristen Witzke, he just beats up people who the crowd doesn't like and just like does push-ups and mocks them. And then he like cuts
I love the push-ups.
Oh, the push-ups become like the most over move in the company next to the spinneroonie. Like, he just does the push-ups and makes fun of them, and the crowd roars at it. And then he does his little promo about being the big bad booty daddy. And then literally his character is like, then he goes backstage and tries to figure out who he's fucking tonight. And that's his whole character. And it gets crazy over. And this idea that he's like the last free agent. Like everyone else is stuck on their brands, but he gets to choose where he goes. So they like play that out over a couple weeks. So he's the only guy appearing on every show. He's getting crazy. Like if he doesn't get buried by that match, if they give him a couple like weeks to get into ring shape.
It's the worst match of all time. It's so bizarre to me. I don't know why they didn't just hold off on him and Triple H until WrestleMania.
That's the other thing, is that like Triple H needs somebody for this match. There's nobody automatically that you're slotting in there.
Because he beat everybody already. He already beat Michaels and Van Dam and Kane. So it ends up the only guy left is Booker T. Booker T ends up being the big winner here because he's the only guy left Triple H could possibly work with at WrestleMania.
But all you have to do is just continue the Shawn Michaels Triple H thing through the Rumble. Maybe you give RVD a shot at the February pay-per-view, and then you get Steiner at Mania. That's exactly what we're building towards.
Yeah, you give Steiner time to work on the house shows, get his cardio up. Keep it, he can do some short matches on TV. He can come in late in the Rumble and win it, or he can just be in the Rumble briefly and get screwed by Triple H to get that feud going. But just protect him. Instead, they throw him out there, and Triple H tries to be fucking Ric Flair in 1985 working with Lex Luger and try to have a classic match with this big stiff, and it totally bombs. It's one of the worst matches of all time.
And everyone treats it like it was this big self-burial for Steiner. And granted, Steiner does not do himself any fucking favors, but it's so clear what his limitations are at this point. If they make this a 9-minute match, like, it's totally fine.
He just does a bunch of suplexes, Triple H runs away, DQ. Instead, trying to go 18, he was blown up 2 minutes into the match. Like, he's in amazing shape. Like, he's got the best body he ever did. But he doesn't have cardio because he hasn't wrestled in 2 years at this point.
Yeah. And it's just so sad that Triple H, in trying to emulate Ric Flair, buries everyone in a way that Ric Flair never did.
Yeah. Also, Triple H was never Ric Flair, and he sure as shit wasn't Ric Flair at this point where he weighed like 260 pounds.
I had to say, yeah, he's like fat, chunky Triple H. He's not even Triple H anymore.
No.
And it's just so sad because, like, 6 months before this, when he first comes back and like when he turns heel, like he's working like the lights out, like he's really bringing it. But like he decides that his new style has to be Ric Flair. There's the idea that they let him do this, despite the fact that Vince has no love whatsoever for NWA style wrestling, despite the fact that Vince has no particular love for Ric Flair. It's just it's a sign of how much stroke Triple H has at this point. That he can just be like, I'm going to dictate the new main event style, and it's going to be shit.
What do you make of the fact that he starts wearing, like, colored trunks in this era? Like, he wore red trunks against Steiner. He wears purple here at WrestleMania. Like, really weird seeing Triple H in trunks that aren't black.
I think that's meant to be, like, a heelish thing. Or, like,
it's more Ric Flair stuff, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's just Ric Flair. Like, he is cosplaying poorly as Ric Flair.
Surprised he never started wearing a robe.
I bet you he suggested it, and Vince was like, no, fuck you. We don't do robes.
Oh, man.
Because he would have just basically been Robert Roode at that point.
Yeah. I mean, and in an incredible contrast, we had one of the worst world title matches of all time at the Rumble in Triple H versus Steiner. And then we also had one of the best between Benoit and Angle. They put on an absolute classic for the WWE title.
If you have not seen that match recently... It is the first match I ever recall seeing getting a standing ovation from the audience.
Yeah.
Like, I know that, like, the ladder match between the Hardys and Edge and Christian did. Like, other matches had. But I'd never seen one get it just for the quality of the wrestling.
For a pure wrestling match. Not a stunt fest. I can't believe they took all those bumps. There's not even a chair shot in that match.
There's no story going into it. It's literally just two guys get in a ring. 20 minutes later, they leave it, and the fans... It literally changes the way that the fan base sees professional wrestling after that. Like, the era of the great match being important happens after that.
Yeah, I think you might argue that's one of the most important matches in WWE history. Like, I do think that changed both the company and the fans' perception of like what a great match was.
And it wasn't just that. Like the whole SmackDown 6 period is kind of like it's feeding fans this new idea of what great wrestling is, and it's so incredibly good that they can't help but understand it. But like this central match, like this is the match that you can point to and be like, this is one of the formative matches. This is just when the indie scene is really starting to catch on fire too. So like all of those guys, like your Samoa Joes, your CM Punks, your Christopher Daniels, they're on the indies watching this and emulating it. That becomes the indie style, which now is what everyone does. Like it's literally that. Every match is an attempt to recreate like the chemistry that Kurt Angle and Chris Benoit had.
Brock Lesnar won the Royal Rumble that night, so that set up Brock versus Kurt for this WrestleMania. No Way Out, we had the second Triple H Steiner match, which wasn't good, but wasn't the disaster that the first one was. But Triple H goes over with the pedigree, and that's the end of that. Steiner's WWE run is basically Steiner for the rest of his run will have the honor of teaming with Test.
Yeah, as being his number one testicle.
Do you think they were trying to get him to quit?
Probably.
I probably would have at that point.
But I also just don't think they had any other ideas for him. Like, he was supposed to be like a top guy, and then when he wasn't, they were like, oh,
no.
Well, he's actually a gigantic pain in the ass loose cannon, so he's not going to draw us money. He can go back to the mid card.
Yeah. He's not booked on this WrestleMania.
Not a fucking shocker.
Epic fall from grace. Also, No Way Out. Rock Hogan 2. In another thing that they probably should have just saved for this show, because No Way Out drew, I think, roughly the same number of buys as WrestleMania did this year.
That's nuts.
I think they both did. I think No Way Out did about 450 or 500,000 buys. Really strong number for No Way Out. And then really bad number for WrestleMania.
Well, it's funny because The Rock is basically just doing his run of dream matches. Like he's like has a checklist of all the matches he wants to have before he's done wrestling forever. And he's just like, yeah, I want to wrestle Hogan again. I want to get my win back from Austin. I want to
work with Goldberg.
I want to work with Goldberg. He's my buddy. I want to bring him back. I want to work with Sting. That doesn't wind up happening. I want to work with Ric Flair. I want to work with Eddie Guerrero. Yep. He does all those things.
Yeah, he's just running through the Hurricane somehow ends up on that list. Get to that. But yeah, Rock Hogan 2 in Montreal, not as special as Rock Hogan 1, but really fun because this Hollywood Rock run is just amazing stuff. Rock's heel character is so incredibly entertaining.
And we'll get a little bit more into that when we get to the actual match. But yeah, like this is some of the best stuff that anyone's ever done. Just such an extent that like it retroactively like makes me like The Rock more than I would have. I hated The Rock. The Rock from like 97 to 2000 sucks. He's such a dickhead.
It's a hot take that I pretty much agree with. I think the character's incredibly unlikable.
But like this Rock, this like incredibly funny, witty, just coming with the quips immediately all the time, like
the charisma machine and the rhyming, just incredible stuff. Yeah. So that match, Hogan's got it won. He hits the leg drop. The lights go out. Sylvain Grenier makes his debut as Vince's personal referee. Vince hits Hogan with a chair. Rock gets the pin, and then Vince bloodies Hogan after the match to kick off that feud for WrestleMania. So we're set for, we've got Angle versus Lesnar, and we've got Hogan versus McMahon. We got a couple blanks to fill in here. The Hogan Vince thing, honestly, like if you're going to say what the most promoted match on this show was, it might well have been Hogan versus McMahon.
It definitely was. That was the one that was on the side
of got the hottest, like the biggest angles in terms of like really bloody, like violent stuff, really long promos. They brought in a bunch of legends to like talk about the match, the way they do when they've got something really big going on. So in some sense, like Hogan versus Vince was our main event here.
And I remember like that was what they were advertising like on billboards on the side of buildings. It was like Hogan and Vince, and it was like Brock and Angle, and like that's what was there. like surprisingly little Rock in Austin for considering The Rock had basically become a household name at this point.
Yeah. I mean, so the Hogan Vince feud, it's like a mix of real life and kayfabe. They're feuding over who really built WWE, who built WrestleMania, who was responsible for Hulkamania. Vince also says he has a grudge against Hogan for testifying against him at the steroid trial, which not really true. Like Hogan was called to testify, but he, denied that Vince ever sold him steroids, denied that Vince told him to take steroids. But, it makes for a better story for Vince to say you testified against me.
And I honestly wonder why they didn't go even further with it. Like for Hogan's part, Hogan stays mostly kayfabe. He's just like, you never gave me the credit I deserve, brother. You pushed me out. Like it could have been way more specific. Like you thought Warrior was a bigger star than me, but I showed him his asshole in the middle of the ring. Like you could have gone way deeper.
Where there's the really bad Hogan botched promo where he just can't get his lines right, and he's like, if you actually think that I was just the right guy in the wrong place at the right time. Let me say that again, brother. So they edited it. I don't know why I've seen that clip because
it's in like 3 Botchamanias, I think.
Yeah, but was that a live SmackDown or something? Because it was on SmackDown and it's edited on the network. But
I think somebody just got a hold of the footage. Like I don't think it's.
I don't know how that worked, but yeah, it seems like sometimes people would like get the raw footage off a satellite feed or something, like it would leak.
And it would happen in Britain a lot. Like they would get sent the wrong feed or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird, but yeah, like obviously everybody's seen this, but I don't know how. It must have either it was a live episode of SmackDown and they've just like subsequently edited it on the network, or like it was a leak. But everybody's seen this like clip. It's pretty famous. Yeah, Hogan just horribly botches his lines in this promo. He cannot get them straight.
Yeah, and unfortunately, like, you can tell that there's like something. Vince could always conjure hate when he needed to, but even then, you could kind of sense that like he was getting some demons out with this storyline. Like he was just like, I've wanted to talk shit to Hulk fucking Hogan for leaving my company and joining Turner for years.
Yeah, they just go so far over the top. Like it's so Hogan bleeds so many times and so much. Vince, when they do the contract signing, Vince hits him with a chair and like stabs him with the pen over and over, and then signs Hogan's name in his own blood. Like just cartoony stuff, like comic book villain stuff.
At this point, Vince McMahon is just Lex Luthor, and he's just fighting Superman, I guess.
Yeah, the problem, except if Lex Luthor was more jacked than Superman.
That's the thing.
I think we get into Vince's body is so much better than Hogan's at this point.
Vince's body is like, look, we all know it's steroids, and like we don't need to like really push that fact very hard. But his body is preposterous. It is not a thing that should be genetically or physically possible for a 55-year-old man to be sporting the body of like The Rock now. It doesn't. He is insanely jacked, Steve.
Yeah. So I mean that's what we get into. Is on the one hand it's like, the idea that like, can Hogan beat Vince? That seems kind of silly, but like Vince is in much better shape than Hogan. Like Hogan is not particularly physically impressive at this point. He's pretty saggy.
And after a year on the road, he's also starting to like break down a little bit physically. Like even though they're going to get on the outs here pretty soon, I think Hogan's run was pretty much done regardless because he was physically just breaking down.
Could do. Yeah, even like walking at this point looks like it's a challenge for him.
Well, you do like a leg drop at that age every single night for like 2 years, you're going to kill yourself.
They added the stipulation that Hogan's career would be on the line in the match because why not? Just layer the stipulations on here. It's a street fight. Hogan has to retire if he loses. This is where they probably should have done the hair versus hair match. I think they were going to get there. They were going to get there with the Mr. America thing, which comes after this, where it was going to be mask versus hair. If Hogan loses, he has to take the mask off, and if it's revealed that he's Hogan, he gets fired. But if Vince loses, he has to shave his head.
And they definitely should have gotten there because that sounds great. Vince gets like really obsessed with shaving his own head in this time. It's just like all of his feuds inevitably are like, all right, who's going to be the one to do it? Who's going to be the one to do it?
Donald Trump.
It turns out it's Donald Trump, which is
can't
not
wait
anything.
till we get to that. Can't wait till we get to that WrestleMania.
Oh, there's not going to be anything fucking emotionally loaded about that situation.
They had some fun nostalgia appearances to promote the match. Mean Gene showed up. They had Roddy Piper do a taped interview and a bit of foreshadowing. They had Arnold Schwarzenegger do an interview where he said that it was Vince who created Hulkamania in an odd bit of healing off.
Yeah, fucking Arnold just going with the heel.
It's funny because I'm pretty sure he was running for governor of California at this point, so he really should have been playing babyface.
Hey, man. Arnold speaks the truth.
Worked out for him.
Oh, boy.
So as we said, WWE title match is Lesnar versus Angle. That felt like an inevitable collision course. Like from the time Lesnar debuted, I think he could have penciled in like Lesnar versus Kurt for WrestleMania.
They're so similar in so many ways. I mean, physically they're not all that similar, but just like their background is so similar and like what their top tier talent is in real life. It's just a matter of like these could have at one point been the two best amateur wrestlers in the world. So it did seem like basically I remember from the moment Lesnar arrived, people were talking about him and Kurt. Like it wasn't just a fan obsession, but you could tell people inside the company were like serious marks for that idea too. And then apparently backstage, like all through this period, like they're just shit talking each other about who could take each other down.
Yeah, they're getting in the ring and wrestling before shows and messing around.
So like obviously it seems inevitable and it seems like a dream match. I will tell you that I never thought that they had a great match together. The closest that they came to having a great match together was probably that Iron Man match they had.
I really like that Iron Man match.
But part of that is because Lesnar specifically does not wrestle like himself in that match. He goes 100% dickhead heel.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of what works there. They're just so fucking similar. And like, especially in this, like we'll get to the match, but face Brock Lesnar is the worst thing I can possibly imagine because he's about the least likable person I can possibly imagine.
It just doesn't work. Yeah, that's my thing with this. The roles are reversed here. Brock should be the undefeated heel champion, and Kurt should be the baby face who slays the beast and wins the title. Like Brock is the face, just doesn't work. He's not a face. Like, I know people will cheer him. That's fine. He needs to be positioned as the bad guy. Just put him against more likable people.
Exactly. And it's not hard because this entire roster is more likable people. Not just because Brock Lesnar is such an unlikable dickhead, though he is, but also because you have so many people for him to wrestle. And there's not that many heels on the SmackDown roster. It's basically all baby faces. You need your top guy to be a heel. But I think Kurt wanted to be heel. He had never really been babyface, though like at any point they could have turned him because the fans were ready.
I mean, he was super over as a face during the invasion, and as we've said, the mistake they made was turning him there. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's tough to say. Kurt, I mean, he played both face and heel well. I think this was the moment where you could have made him a superstar as a babyface if he was the first guy to beat Lesnar.
And that's kind of what happens in the summer, because when they do turn him face, and it's like him and Lesnar, like that works much better
when Lesnar's playing the heel. Yeah.
Yes. It's just like there's no heat on Lesnar coming for the title. It's an inevitability that he's going to beat Angle. Nobody have to try to find all these ways to make him the underdog, and they just can't do it. Brock Lesnar's never the underdog. The one good thing that comes from that is that one of the things they come up with to make him the underdog is Team Angle, which is a smashing success.
Yeah. Loved Haas and Benjamin as a tag team.
Which is funny because they had very little time together as a tag team in OVW before they get called up. They weren't really meant to be a tag team. They were both singles guys. Charlie Haas was in a team with his brother Russ before his brother Russ tragically died.
Shelton was teaming with Brock Lesnar, of all people.
A big part of the reason they called those two up is because Charlie Haas was also an amateur wrestler, and Shelton was too, and Shelton had wrestled Brock before. So they thought that those two would be ideal people to bump and feed for Brock. Not knowing that they would gel as an amazing tag team together.
Yeah. So we're set for Angle versus Lesnar. There's a complication. Angle's got a bad neck. He
Uh-oh.
needs surgery. He should not have done this match. This was a very bad idea that he went through with this, but whether it was the money or just the glory of main eventing WrestleMania, he wanted to do the match. And in typical Kurt Angle fashion, like he's not just going to go out there and like take it easy and protect himself. He goes out there and goes balls out and tries to have the match of the year.
Yes, he does, and he winds up suffering for it too. Because if you ever watch the documentary about this show, like he, like what did he pass out in the shower at the end of the night?
Yeah, he goes down. His body shuts down. He makes it through the match. He gets through the curtain, like gets to the shower, and then just I think the adrenaline wears off and like the shock of what he had just been through hits him, and he's like got hot water running on him, but he's down and like shivering. His body is so messed up. It was very stupid that they let him go through with this. He could have ended up paralyzed.
And like, not that this is any sort of excuse, because it's not. Like, this is a reprehensible thing that they did, not just with him, but with Austin as well, which we'll get to. But like, they are in such a bad situation because there's no clear main event for this show at all. But if you remove Kurt from this, like the backup match, and they do have one, is Lesnar versus Benoit. But that match has negative 1,000 heat on it. Like, it's just a match.
It's not gonna work. Like, that was sort of and that I think might have just been smart fans projecting that like Benoit doesn't really have anything going on. Like, he'd be the guy to fill in. It makes sense because they'd deliver a good match. But yeah, Benoit is not really a world title. I mean, Benoit had just had that really good match with Kurt at the Rumble, but Benoit is not in a position to be challenging for the world title at WrestleMania at this point. And then Brock's already beaten Undertaker. He's already beaten Big Show. There's just nobody else on SmackDown on his level right now.
No, and there's nobody that can really. And Vince's perspective on this has always been, all right, if you got to take Kurt out, you got to replace him with somebody bigger. But there is nobody.
Yeah, nothing. There's nothing that works.
Unless you like somehow
throw him into like Rock and Austin or something, which that's super weird.
Yeah, make that for the title. That'd be bizarre because then Rock's got to win. It's just it's a mess. It's a mess. It's a mess. There's no good answer. And then like what main events this show? Triple H, Booker T?
Oh, fuck. Well, maybe Booker would have actually won if they had done
I
that.
guess you would have had to have had him win. Yeah, because like they don't think that Rock and Austin's going to happen until like the day of.
Can't put Vince and Hogan on last. Like, that match turns out to be good, but there was no reason to expect it would be.
And and at this point, like, Michaels Jericho is essentially a mid-card match. They're going to give it 20 minutes, but
it's Shawn Michaels' return to WrestleMania, but that would feel very weird for that to be the main event.
Jericho is a fucking mid-carder at this point. Like, he has no business being anywhere near the main event. It's just, this is not a show that's built well at all, but it's not entirely their fault. But like other WrestleManias, you can see where they would have been like, all right, we can't do that match. We're pulling it. We'll figure something else out. But this one, like, what do you do? Like, basically your whole main event, the whole main event of this show, Vince McMahon and Hulk Hogan, like Kurt Angle versus Brock could have not happened. Rock versus Austin could have not happened. Hogan versus McMahon, either one of them could have gotten hurt on the way in here. They're old ass men.
Yeah, and like Triple H and Booker T is not a WrestleMania main event.
There's a version of this show where the whole show hangs on that match, and that's ooh.
They were gonna pry that title from Triple H's cold dead hands,
and they just like throw some like Rob Van Dam versus Spike Dudley shit in here.
Yeah, so they did a big swerve where they announced Angle versus Lesnar for SmackDown a couple weeks before WrestleMania. Like every smart fan is like, oh, Kurt's going to lose the title here. Like they're going to do a quick match. Lesnar's going to beat him. Instead, they did a swerve where Kurt and Eric Angle switched places and Kurt caught Lesnar in a quick small package to pin him.
That's one of my favorite segments in SmackDown history, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those, like, I don't know if they booked it with the idea that, like, Kurt is actually going to drop the title. And then at the last minute, he was like, no, I want to do the match. Like, let's go through with it.
Yeah, just like a get out of jail free card.
Probably that, no, but like, why was Eric Angle there? Like,
Right.
I think there was always planned to be the swerve, but it was kind of I think it was just something to show some vulnerability to Lesnar, that like, oh, he got, Kurt tricked him by using his brother and Team Angle,
Yeah, that
and
was the
then
idea of the match.
And then Brock beat the shit out of Eric because he's a good baby face.
And that was the idea of the match, is that all that Kurt really has is that he's smarter and he's more technically excellent. Every other advantage goes to Brock, which is what the heel's supposed to have.
So the Raw World Title match, as we've said, is Booker T versus Triple H. I don't know I mean, it's just, there's not really a lot else they can do. Booker's the only guy left, face on Raw left, that Triple H hasn't beaten already, unless they were going to do Triple H Austin, and I don't think they wanted to put Austin in the title match.
I would also argue that, like, we kind of undersell where Booker T was in the company at this point. Like, he had spent the last 2 years basically rebuilding himself from scratch after The Rock squashed him out of existence. And, like, at this point, he's probably the second or third most over guy on either show. Like,
and it's totally stealth because he hasn't been doing anything big.
Right.
He's been teaming with Goldust, and that team was so good, and that relationship was so strong, and Booker was so lovable as Goldust's friend that it got him super over as a face.
Yeah, and, like, his individual matches have been kind of on fire. Like, he's just been stuck in the mid-card doing nothing, but, like, the fans were ready for Booker T. So it's not like they just picked him out of a hat because he hadn't been jobbed out yet. Like, he was the next guy. It was just a matter, I would say that, like, he's even more over than Rob Van Dam is at this point. So, like, it's more clearly that it should be Booker.
You could have done Van Dam because Van Dam got screwed by Flair.
Yes.
So, like, to do Van Dam, I think would have been fine. And, like, Van Dam you probably would have. I feel like Triple H should have lost the belt here.
It doesn't even matter who he loses it to. No, he just needs to lose it.
Have somebody. Instead, he holds it until September when he finally loses it to Goldberg. This is the so-called Reign of Doom. He just beats everybody on Raw.
And it's a thing where, like, I understand what they were trying to do. That after so many years of just quick title changes, just swapping it to everybody all the time, doesn't mean shit. Yeah. They want to establish a real champion.
Long-term heel champion.
And I approve of that idea. It's a great idea.
Triple H was the only other one they'd had. And even when you look at Triple H in like 99, 2000, none of his reigns were that long because they kept having him lose the belt. Like he just hold it for like 3 months at a time and then drop it and then win it back.
But the truth of this, like, JBL Triple H long title reign idea that the people in WWE didn't quite seem to understand is that those title reigns they were trying to emulate, like the Ric Flair ones, weren't really long title reigns. It was just one guy circled around the title for a long period of time. So it wasn't that Ric Flair held the belt for like 8 years straight. It's that he lost the belt 25 times in there, but would always win it back.
Different model as far as... Yeah, Ric Flair was the champion, but he wasn't on TV every week. He wasn't defending the title on pay-per-views every month. He was defending the title at house shows and, like, doing DQ finishes so they could come back around again. Here it's like Triple H is on TV every single week as the champion. Every week as the champion, and he's beating these guys all the time. Sometimes he's just beating them straight up clean, which Ric Flair never beat anybody clean. Like, Ric Flair never beat anybody in the middle of the ring with his finish. It was always a screw job.
But that's why the Triple H 99 run is such a better example of successful booking, because even though I don't necessarily agree with all the times he lost the belt, having a babyface win sometimes and then he just gets it back provides these like little moments. Like, it's like how Lex Luger beat Hogan before Sting got to him. It's just like taking just a little bit of like the pressure off, like the release valve, so that fans don't get discouraged. Just giving them that one bright moment, and then Hogan gets it back. But then because the real moment is coming later, you have to have those little moments of hope. Otherwise, it's just...
They did give us that with Shawn winning the title. It was a great moment. Like we said, it probably would have been better if they'd held off here till WrestleMania, but I don't think they expected that Shawn was going to be back for as long as he turned out to be.
But if you do that and you have Booker win here and then maybe like Goldberg wins at Survivor Series, despite the fact that Triple H has essentially been the champion for like a year straight, it still feels less like a never-ending title reign if you just break it up those 3 times, you know? Like that it needed somebody to beat him here. You needed that.
So the night after No Way Out, they did a battle royal to determine who the number one contender would be. Came down to Rock and Booker T, and on the one hand, as you're watching it, you're like, oh, wouldn't really make sense for Rock to win since Rock is a heel. But the one thing I thought is maybe they would do Rock versus Triple H versus Austin and do that big triple threat match they had never gotten to do during the Attitude Era. So I did sort of think Rock would win the Battle Royal and they would end up getting Austin into the title match too, but Booker shocked the world and threw The Rock out and won the Battle Royal.
To a gigantic pop.
Enormous.
Because nobody really believed he was going to do it. And like that moment where it's just like, oh, the guy that we loved is finally getting taken seriously? Fuck yes. That's like that Daniel Bryan moment where it's just like, oh, they finally see what we see. Yes, we're going to get it.
And then they took that goodwill, turned that sumbitch sideways, and stuck it straight up our candy asses.
Yeah. Are we going to talk about that whole thing now, or are we going to wait till the match?
Let's do it now.
Because I got some thoughts.
So the next week, Booker comes out to do his big promo where he's thanking the fans, talking about how he's got the biggest opportunity of his life at WrestleMania. Triple H interrupts him. Triple H talks shit to him. Triple H says that, quote unquote, people like you don't get to be the world champion. Tells Booker he's an entertainer, that he should dance for him with his nappy hair. He should smile for the fans because that's his role. It's not to be the world champion.
Now there are 2 things that we're doing here. You could have changed that promo slightly and not made it directly a racial thing. It could have just been a classist thing, or perhaps I'm a real wrestler, you're the jokey mid-carder, you're not legit. It could have just been that. Yes.
Don't say nappy hair.
The second that you make it into you're a minstrel show joke because you're a black man and black men don't win in WWE. The second you reference that, you put a metric ton of pressure on this feud. The second the word nappy left his mouth, Booker T needed to job him out in 30 seconds or this is a disaster.
Yeah, and the thing here is Booker looks like such a piece of shit because he just stands there and takes this. He doesn't say a word while this is going on.
Which is not his character at all, much less his role as a black man. How does the Booker T character
not kick Triple H's ass when he starts talking to him like that?
He doesn't even say, tell me you didn't just say that. He doesn't even do that.
So, okay. Whether that was in the script or whether it was something Triple H threw in there off the cuff, they could have reeled it in. They could have been like, okay, that was too far. We can't do any more of that. Instead, they doubled down. The next week, Booker comes out and does a heartfelt promo where he talks about his past, explains that he made some mistakes growing up, says, he put a gun in somebody's face. He did a robbery. He went to prison for it. While he was in prison, he realized he needed to stand up for himself or he would fall for anything. And he's not proud of the mistakes he made, but he's proud that he turned his life around and became the man that he's become today. And this promo doesn't get a huge reaction because I think the crowd kind of didn't understand what he was saying, and Booker was a little off his game here, which I can understand. It's a tough promo for him to cut.
I mean, it's an inspirational story, but it's so different from the character he's been on screen. Yeah. Like there's no levity to this at all. And like fans are like, this isn't really what we like about you, dude. Why are we doing this?
Really, really a bummer here. And then things get really bad as Ric Flair comes out. Tells Booker that, you're no Tiger Woods, you're no Michael Jordan, you're damn sure no Triple H. Doing 15 months in the big house might mean that you're bad to the bone, but it doesn't make you fit to be the world champion. So I'm going to make you an offer. next week, you can meet us at the airport, drive our limo to the arena, and carry our bags, and accept that that's your role in this company, or we're going to kick your ass.
And like,
so this is just a repeat of a promo Harley Race did on Ron Simmons when Simmons was challenging Lex Luger for the world title in Bill Watts era WCW. They did the exact same thing where they offered him the job as a chauffeur and said, you need to carry our bags. I'm sure this is just a rerun of like an angle they did a million times in different Southern territories over the years.
This whole era is just Triple H reliving his favorite WCW moments from when he was 9. And like, okay, let's unwrap this, because Booker T cutting the promo where he reveals that he was previously a criminal and he's overcome that, that's very inspirational. That smacks of Vince heard about his story and wanted him to put it on TV.
And they did a confidential episode where he told the whole story and they went through his whole background that was really good. Again, plug for Confidential. It's on the network now.
Best show in the history of WWE or any wrestling, really. But it's just for Ric Flair to come out and double down. Again, you can make this a class thing without inherently making it a race thing. But the second you make it a race thing, it's not as simple as it just being Ric Flair is a racist, Triple H is a racist, Booker T is a proud black man, they're going to get it on. Because what you're doing is you're reflecting the gigantic racism that's been at the heart of this particular company for its entire existence.
Yeah.
And the industry as a whole. You can't just flippantly bring this up without mentioning that, oh, hey, yeah, actually, unless you count The Rock, which some people do and some people don't, there's never been a black world champion in this company ever. So when you say that the black man can't be world champion and is not world champion caliber, you're saying WWE thinks that, not just Triple H. Like, it's so much worse than just simply being a bad storyline. You're telling your black viewers that they're trash. And then, spoiler, then you're telling them that you're right about that.
That's okay. That is the question at the core of this. Is I think there's two schools of thought here. One is you shouldn't go there at all, and the other is if you go there, you can't have the racist win, which, I mean, I think you're right that if you go there, you can't have the racist win. I take the side of don't go there at all, because I'm just sort of like, yeah, I think people use wrestling as an escape from the real world, so it's a mistake to bring in stuff that's too heavy from the real world. I just think, like, let's stay away from, I don't know, racism, homophobia, violence against women, like murder, death, illness, like there's things that are just feel too serious for the wrestling show that it's probably better if we just stay off that, because people are trying to forget about the troubles of their real life when they watch wrestling.
And here's the thing. It doesn't, even for the most out of touch person to racial matters that you can possibly imagine, which is at least some portion of WWE's audience. I think we both agree. You don't have to implicitly put a racist against Booker T. Booker T winning the title from anyone is a triumph over racism in general in this industry. And that's something that everyone would understand. It would be a triumph for African Americans for Booker T to win the title. Even he doesn't have to beat the most racist man on the roster for it to still be a victorious moment in that way. You don't have to have somebody call him nappy-headed to get across the idea that, hey, it might be a big deal for a black man to beat a white man for the world title.
Yeah, and like you said, there's other ways to do this where it can be class. It can be Triple H is a rich snob and Booker grew up dirt poor.
Yes.
It can be I'm a real wrestler and you're not. It can be WWF versus WCW. Like, there's various ways you can do this without going to the race angle.
And there's like a million different avenues you could have gone down. The WCW versus WWE one has a ton of life in it. Like, hey, I left that stinking pit of a company when we were both mid-carders. Look where I am and look how long it took you.
Yeah.
The class thing of just like, I've always had a silver spoon in my mouth and I'm here where I belong at the top. People like you who start at the bottom belong at the bottom. Like, you don't. And while that might imply racism, You're not coming directly
Yeah,
out and saying.
But you could do that same feud with a white wrestler is the difference.
Correct. And in fact, that was Dusty Rhodes' career, was that he believed he was black, and that was the premise of all of his feuds.
Yeah.
But like, I feel very strongly about this because WWE is basically implicitly stating that Triple H and Ric Flair are correct by having them win at the end of this. Like, there's no other way to put it. Is the fact that nobody in that writer's room spoke up and said, hey, whoa, actually, no. Imagine how this looks to people. Because there's not a single fucking black man in that room. And you know that.
Of course not. Meltzer would say that it says that the original plan was for Booker to win the title and Triple H talked Vince out of it. Bruce Pritchard denies that, says that Triple H was always going to win. What say you? I tend to err on the side of Triple H was probably always going to win because he always won in this era.
I believe that the Meltzer story is based around the fact that no one in their right mind would think that Booker T wouldn't win.
Yeah, but these people are fucking idiots, is what
That's
that doesn't take into account.
I absolutely believe that Bruce Pritchard's line that it was always intended for Triple H to win, because I don't think anyone in that writer's room had any fucking idea of what it meant for Triple H to win that match. I don't think they had any idea. I think they were just like, oh, we'll get some heat on it. And then like there will be more heat on Triple H so that he can pass on to somebody else. I don't think that the scale of what they were doing meant anything to them. Like they just didn't get it. And so, of course, they would always have Triple H winning. Like, they're planning on getting him to Goldberg. Like, that's all they're thinking about.
Another big match is Shawn Michaels returning to WrestleMania for the first time since 1998 to face Chris Jericho. This ends up being a great feud that kind of started by accident. Like, they just did a Jericho-Michaels promo, I think on the way into the Elimination Chamber that they were both going to be in, where Jericho is like, you know, I used to want to be you, but now I've surpassed you. You're a broken down old man. And Michaels nailed him with the super kick. And it was just kind of like everybody could sense we've got something special here. So the basis of the feud is, you know, Jericho used to idolize Shawn Michaels. They sort of played as like, oh, Jericho grew up idolizing Shawn Michaels. Like, Jericho's only 5 years younger than Shawn Michaels. But when Jericho was coming into the business, like, Shawn was already a star. So yeah, it's reasonable to say, like, Jericho did model himself on Shawn Michaels. And Jericho feels like, I used to want to be Shawn Michaels, but I've surpassed him. You know, I'm not the next Shawn Michaels. I'm the first Chris Jericho. And
they get those great.
Yeah, I love when they literally
like
show
young Jericho has the tassels, just like the Rockers. Yeah. And he's doing all of Shawn's moves.
Yeah, the promo where Jericho shows the video of like, you know, that's Shawn doing a Hurricane Rana. This is my first match. That's me doing the same Hurricane Rana. Really good stuff. And it just turned out they had some all-time chemistry.
And like Jericho said this in his book, and like Jericho says a lot of things in his book that you can kind of take or leave, however it is that you want to do that. But one of the things he said is that his agenda was just to get Shawn back. And it's kind of similar to the way that Triple H felt about Ric Flair. It's just like, this was my hero, and I want to see him do what he used to do. Like Jericho's whole agenda was just like, I am going to get a fucking 5-star match out of Shawn Michaels just to prove to him that he can do it. And that's exactly what happens. But Shawn lets Jericho call this match, famously. That's a big deal.
Imagine the feeling. First, as Chris Jericho, you're getting to work with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania, and then he's like, hey, you're the heel. You should call the match. Ooh, boy.
And the pressure. Yeah. Being like, oh, yeah, no
Imagine
problem.
Going to WrestleMania with Shawn Michaels and stinking it up.
Oh, man.
Isn't the craziest thing. I mean, Shawn had been pretty good in this run so far, but he hadn't been wrestling that much.
And like I said, he wasn't mailing it in per se, but like he didn't know what his style now was supposed to be. He didn't know what he could do. He was kind of just playing the hits, you know, like, oh, here's the elbow, here's the super kick, here's the kip up. Yeah.
They did one of my favorite angles of all time at the Royal Rumble. First, Jericho won a match on Raw with the stipulation that the winner would get to pick their number for the Rumble. He gets on the mic after the match. He says he knows everyone thinks he wants to pick number 30, but number 30 never wins. Instead, what he wants to do is enter number 1 and do what Shawn Michaels did in 1995 and go wire to wire and win the Royal Rumble. But then Shawn comes out and says, well, that's a problem because I already took number 1, so you're going to have to settle for number 2. And then they go to the Rumble where Shawn enters first, and then lights go out, Jericho's entrance starts to play, but it's Christian.
It's Christian.
And it's like, wait, if Christian's up there, where's Jericho? Boom! Chair shot. Jericho snuck in through the crowd. Jericho beats the shit out of Michaels, busts him open, and throws him out of the ring in 2 minutes. No one on the planet saw that coming.
Just sheer brutality. Like, and just that moment where you're looking at Christian and you're like, wait a minute, that's too skinny to beat Jericho. Oh no.
Good. Yeah. Just great stuff. And then, yeah, some really good promos on the way in. This is, like, I think the one feud on the show that's actually built, where they hit it. Like, both guys are in the right roles. The feud is right. Everything works.
We also need to, this gets lost in things too, because everyone's like, we always talk about Shawn Michaels and where he is. Let's talk about where Jericho was. Because after WrestleMania 18, he takes a dive
like a stone,
like only The Miz can relate to.
Yeah.
Where like he drops into the mid card like a stone to the point where he's on the same level as Christian. He'll pop up every so often.
Teaming up as Vitamin C.
Like 3 months before his WrestleMania match with Shawn Michaels, they do the segment where the Dudleys find their jar of ass cream. And while that's one of the funniest segments in wrestling history, that's where he is as a credible competitor. Yeah. He gets stripped naked and they find his ass cream. That's where that is. So for him to be rebuilt as a credible challenger from Shawn Michaels and to be rebuilt into someone who can have a match this competitive and compelling, it comes out of nowhere. Like, Jericho just gets his teeth into this in a way that he hasn't for anything since, like, the Rock feud.
Well, and it's just like, it's a recurring theme of Jericho's career that he manages to come up with stuff to save himself. Like, the only time he didn't pull it off was when he ended up working with Fandango at WrestleMania 29. Like, yeah, like, but it seems like so many times they had nothing for him and he would come up with something on his own, and it feels like that's what happened here. Like, just finagled himself into this Michaels spot, and it ended up being the best thing for everybody.
Yeah, I feel like he was just sitting backstage one day and he told Michaels, like, hey man, I wanted to be a match that was about like I can best you, I can be better than you, but you have to come back and be yourself again to be better than me. And just like that elevator pitch is enough, like, for me to be like, oh shit, yeah, let's fucking do that.
And our other big match is probably the most interesting of them all, as Steve Austin will take on The Rock in what will prove to be the final match of his career. Oh boy, this one.
A lot of people will tell you that they didn't know that was going to be the last match of Austin's career because they weren't really billing it that way. Nope. I think only Austin really knew that this was the end.
Yeah, I don't think he told anybody until afterwards. Like, everybody, like, people, at least a few people knew. I think a lot of people knew Steve's having some neck issues. He's been going to the doctor. I think, like, obviously Vince and JR knew he was in the hospital the night before the match, but I don't think it was until afterwards. I think he himself did know, but I don't think he had really told anybody yet that this is it for me.
I think maybe he told The Rock, and that's why The Rock was so fixated on getting this match, because, like, it has to be you and me for the last one.
Man, I don't think Austin. I don't think they got the news how bad his neck was until about 2 weeks out.
But I think even then, I don't know that Austin agrees to do this match in this way if he doesn't know that he's done. You know what I mean?
I wonder if in the back of his mind, him coming back, it's very fortunate that he did come back and got to do this match, because his legacy is very different if he just
disappears.
If his last thing is he walked out on the company and he beat up Deborah and he never comes back. Like, that's a very different versus going out like a man here at WrestleMania.
Yeah, but that's the other thing too, is that like this is I think the cleanest job he takes since like 1995. It's just like
Yeah.
flat in the middle, 3 rock bottoms, toast, done. Like there's no way he agrees to that unless he knows he's done.
I think he really wanted to return the favor to Rock.
I think so too.
Yeah, like Rock had put him over at WrestleMania a couple times. Rock had never beaten him on a really big stage. Like Rock beat him in the Survivor Series match and the Invasion, but that's not a one-on-one, singles match. This is, definitively Rock getting his win over Austin that he hadn't gotten before.
Yeah, and I don't mean that in a negative way for Austin. I don't mean like he's being selfish or like he just wouldn't put The Rock over. I just mean this is the end to their feud. Like the feud is over after this. You can't do another match. Like you could maybe, but it feels done. Like it's a trilogy. This is the end. Like I don't think Austin cashes in that chip until he knows he's out.
Yeah, and they would, and as a company, I don't think you would want to job Austin out like that to Rock, who's not really going to be around after this,
Exactly.
Especially.
You would prefer to use that, transfer his heat to somebody else instead of this feels in every inch, and maybe it just feels that way when we're looking back on it now, because I don't remember how I felt when it was coming up, but
I didn't
feels
care about it. I was not at all. I love both these guys. I wasn't at all interested in this match because I just didn't. They'd wrestled so many times. I didn't care.
Now we see it as the curtain closing on the Attitude Era. Like this is the last. The Attitude Era kind of officially ends at WrestleMania 17, but like this is the end of it. Like it dies tonight.
So Austin came back from his long absence at No Way Out 2003 for a short match against Eric Bischoff. The storyline was that Vince was threatening to fire Bischoff if he didn't shake things up, so he went out and got Austin to return.
Sheriff Austin.
Yeah. They were definitely planning on Austin versus Bischoff to be their new Austin Vince, but that got cut short by Austin's health problems. Austin and Rock... So they did an episode of Raw. I guess it was the 10th anniversary of Raw in January. They did like some awards, not quite the Slammies, but they did Superstar of the Decade, and Austin won, which I guess was a sure sign he was coming back. But they used that as like Rock's jealousy that Austin won the Superstar of the Decade award instead of him. Rock, returned as a heel after the crowd had booed him at SummerSlam. He comes back as Hollywood Rock, which I think everybody remembers this as some of the best work he ever did, but I can't overstate enough just how good and funny and, delightfully hateful but also entertaining this was.
The brilliance of Hollywood Rock is kind of the exact same brilliance that made The Rock in the first place. When people hate Dwayne Johnson, he eats that alive and turns it into genius. Like when he's on top and he's just like a babyface, like he coasts. He's not creatively stimulated. When it was Die Rocky Die, he found the Rock inside himself. And when it was, oh, you fucking sell out Rock going to Hollywood, he found this. Oh, yeah. He just found this reflection of what they saw from him and turned it back on them in this amazingly brilliant way.
No. Yeah, this is Kobe Bryant, Black Mamba Rock. Like, just takes all that
unstoppable. It's oh my god, and like he turns it back on him in such a great way that like
they end up liking him again.
That's the thing, is that like he gets bigger pops for destroying people in their own hometowns than he ever got as a babyface.
The promos get so good. No, this is not Sing Along with the Great One.
You and I can do the Sacramento promo.
Trailblazing, eyebrow raising, pie eating, biggest, faster than a bullet, stronger than a buck, biggest thing to hit Toronto because the Maple Leafs suck.
Yes. You and I could probably sit here right now and do the Sacramento song
from memory. Sacramento. No, I won't stay. But I'll be sure to come back when the Lakers beat the Kings in May. the heat he got for that.
I think it's the loudest boos I've ever heard in an arena.
Knew exactly what their insecurity was. That as good as the Kings were with C. Webb and Peja Stojakovic and White Chocolate, Jason Williams, they were never going to beat the Shaq Kobe Lakers. And they never did.
You can look for that one on our 2000 sports podcast, which will come someday on Patreon.
I feel like the 90s, I feel like it can bleed into the early thousands. We'll find like a cutoff point.
Oh, yeah. But like, it was so brilliant. And not just, and he had this way of bringing other people into his segments. Like, literally, they would just hand him a mic and be like, we got 20 minutes, riff on whatever you want.
Yeah.
So, like, one of the greatest things from this era is the Rock and Hurricane, which literally just came from him just, like, wandering through the back and cutting promos on people. And then, like, the Hurricane had to quit back, and that touched off a feud.
And then, yeah, the Hurricane just, like, keeps appearing in his locker room. Like, Rock peels the curtain back and Hurricane's there, and he closes it, and he's like, he, like, rubs his eyes and, like, opens the curtain again, and he's still there. Who in the blue hell are you?
And, like, The Rock is having so much fun with the Hurricane. Like, he's just so excited.
Yeah, just I mean, some of these segments literally go 10-minute backstage segment of them just going back and forth.
And, like, the Hurricane was not someone you ever would have imagined.
A fucking jabroni.
And it's just so funny that it's him, and that The Rock, that, like, a superhero and The Rock are in the same fucking universe as each other. And The Rock just trying to, like, square with the fact that this guy exists
like,
and is talking to him.
And has his number. Like, outwits him at every turn. Yeah, when Hurricane points out that he knows he can beat the Scorpion King because Brendan Fraser beat the Scorpion King. And Rock asks him, like, how long he's been there in the locker room. And he's like, oh, long enough, because I know the Scorpion King's got a tiny ding-a-ling.
And just the cartoonish level of offense The Rock takes at that, including the line, whoa, easy there, big fella, that I still say to this day.
Oh, man. Yeah, this had so much more heat than, like, Rock and Austin as a feud just doesn't, there's nothing to it. It's Rock needs to beat Austin at WrestleMania. He's obsessed with it. But Austin can't get beaten up. So they can't have Rock get any heat on Austin.
And there's nothing really for him to say about Austin that hasn't been said a million times. So The Rock's just getting general heat, and just Austin's getting included in that. But so, like, the fans don't give a shit about Austin at this point. Like, he hasn't done anything interesting in over a year.
They didn't have Rock beat up JR, which seemed like the go-to. They had Bischoff do. That's the thing is, like, Austin's really feuding with Bischoff, and Rock is just kind of along for the ride.
Yeah, Rock's feuding with Hurricane, and Austin's feuding with Bischoff.
Tag match, playa.
Dude, Austin and Hurricane versus Rock and Bischoff would have been money.
Yeah.
But, like, and they even get the match in the ring, Rock versus Hurricane, and Hurricane fucking beats him.
Hurricane beats him with Austin's, interference. But
yeah, this is like a Scott Hall WCW Nitro job. But, like, still,
the Hurricane beat The Rock.
You know full on that only happened because The Rock went to Vince and said, I want the Hurricane to beat me.
I can't imagine anyone was willing to pitch Rock have Hurricane beat you.
Yeah. I guarantee you the whole Hurricane thing was just The Rock being like, hey, I got this idea for me and Hurricane. And Vince being like, who the fuck is the Hurricane? Why do you keep bringing him up?
Rock is very much winding down as a wrestler at this point. He does this match. He's around for a couple weeks. He wrestles Goldberg at Backlash. And then he does WrestleMania the year after this. And then he's done till 2011. At this point, he's done The Mummy Returns, where he had the small role, The Scorpion King that he starred in. The Rundown is coming out this summer, and Walking Tall and Be Cool are coming. Like, his movie career is clearly taking off.
And, like, it's not super successful yet. Like, The Rundown will be pretty successful, but he won't.
I love The Rundown.
It's a great movie, but he doesn't have a hit for a while. But,
no,
like,
it's a lot of just, like, doing okay. He starts doing the kids movies after this, which was, I think it was just like playing against type.
Yeah, that was smart of him. Like
his point. Yeah, showing
Gridiron
people,
Gang and Tooth Fairy and all that shit.
showing people he didn't just do. Of course, he ends up really finding his success when he finally starts doing action movies, which seemed like he was resistant for a while here.
Yes. And then he is now probably the last true movie star left in the world.
Yeah, he's. I mean, he's for me the biggest like mover of my ticket. Like I will see a movie because he's in it. I
Yeah.
can't say that about. I mean, there's very few other actors or actresses I can say that about.
Like they call it like he did it like a skit on Saturday Night Live where like about being franchised Viagra, which is like funny, but it's true. Like he's the only actor I can remember since like Tom Cruise in the early 90s where it would be like, "Oh, you put The Rock in this franchise that sucks and nobody likes? Guess what? Now it makes 500 million." Automatically. Journey to the Center of the Earth 2 made $400 million.
Yeah,
It's a sequel to a movie nobody liked.
I saw that stupid ass movie with him in the skyscraper just because he
Fuck
was
yeah.
in it.
Fuck yeah. I've seen every Rock movie, most of them in the theaters. Now, I know that I'm a sucker for these things, and we've established that I've watched a lot of shitty movies in the theaters. The Marine, for example, which I took my wife on a date to. But even so,
It's amazing she married you.
it really is. She's a very patient woman. But like, it's just to that point where like, it's not just me, it's not just you, it's the entire ticket buying body of America.
Yeah, and like men, women, old people, young people, everybody loves this guy. Like there's serious discussion he might run for president. It's not a joke.
It's dead serious, and if he runs, we all kind of understand that he'll probably win. Like it's not. It's just a matter of what his politics are, if he even has any. But like if he like literally says, "Yeah, I'll run for the highest bidder," like it'll be a big deal.
Yeah. The bigger story is, of course, backstage. Austin's having neck problems. The doctors have advised him to retire. They told him not to do the WrestleMania match, but he's determined to go through with the match. I mean, similar situation to Kurt, except turns out Kurt's not done, and he'll continue to wrestle for many years after this. But Austin does this last match, and he rides into the sunset, and he never comes back, even if he came pretty close a few times.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's been told before that he needed to retire, but he always just, found another doctor who told him he could keep going and worked through it. But somehow this was it. I mean, he's not on the no bump list after this because he does get physical a few times after this, but never takes the step of actually getting back in the ring.
Which is funny because now that like Brian's come back and Ed has come back,
Yeah.
I mean he could have a match if he really, really wanted to.
Yeah, I think he just never wanted to. Like
He
just
goes out here so on top,
Yeah, with the kind of guy he is, he would never want to come back and not be the proper Stone Cold Steve Austin. Like for him, the ultimate insult would be for him to be one of those guys he hated who stuck around too long and held the young guys down.
Austin has this perfectly crystallized image in his head of 1995 Hulk Hogan.
Yeah.
And that all he ever wanted in his life was not to be that.
Yeah, and that's what motivated him to become the star that he did, and he
Yeah.
couldn't let himself become the monster he was fighting against.
Every time he wanted to take it easy, he'd be like, "Oh fuck, Hogan wouldn't have wrestled on this house show. Let me go out and take a choke slam." Like that motivated him his whole career.
In classic Austin fashion, he doesn't want to make a big deal out of the fact that this is his retirement match, so it's not promoted as that. Also, he got the news late enough in the game that I don't even know how they would have worked it in. I guess he could have just had Bischoff be like, if you lose to The Rock, you have to retire. And that would have added a lot of stakes and emotion to this match.
Yeah. And I mean, if you had made it like either one has to retire if they lose, because
Because
that The Rock's probably...
it would have been believable for either guy, because I think everybody knew Rock was heading for the movies at this point.
Yeah, so you'd know that somebody's leaving. Like, it wouldn't have occurred to you that both people were leaving.
Yeah. So, I mean, he gets to the weekend. He's not feeling great, but everything seems okay. And then the shit really hits the fan the day before the match. Um, he gets up in the morning. He's not feeling good. He can barely get out of bed. He chugs some energy drinks to get himself going, orders breakfast, has a pot of coffee with breakfast, drinks some more coffee. Him and Kevin Nash go to the gym. He's not feeling good. He doesn't really work out. He kind of just, rides the exercise bike for a little bit, goes back to the hotel and just kind of loses it. I mean, he doesn't describe it this way, but to me, it sounds like he had a panic attack.
Yes. Like he just realizes how much work it's going to be and how difficult it's going to be to have this match and on such a gigantic stage. And it's the last match of his career. And what if he can't do something? What if he's not proud of it?
What if he takes a bad bump and he's paralyzed? What is he going to do with his future? He's not even 40 at this point. I think he's 38. What is he going to do for the rest of his life? He's been a wrestler his whole adult life. It's the only thing he's ever done other than drive a forklift in a warehouse. Like, how the hell is he going to make money?
Not only that, but this is probably the first time in his career where he's vulnerable in a match. Like, what if The Rock decides to eat him alive? What if he...
Yeah.
Like, The Rock could just do whatever he wants with Austin in this match. Like, there's nothing Austin's going to fucking do about it.
So, yeah, I mean, all that just hits him, and his heart starts racing. His legs are jumpy. He thinks he's having a heart attack. I mean, the caffeine probably contributed too, but I think this was just anxiety going overboard.
I guarantee you that at some point, someone in the office that day said, wait a minute, he was hanging out with Nash and now all of a sudden he has a heart attack? Wait a minute.
I know. That sounds...
Because he's got to do the job? Wait a minute.
Yeah, sounds a lot like Nash and the Giant at Starrcade. Steve, let me tell you what I did the one time.
Hey, all you got to do is say you're having a heart attack and they'll just let you go over. It's fine.
So, yeah, he collapses. They take him to the hospital. I mean, there has to be some doubt about whether or not he's going to be able to do the match, but it's Steve Austin. He's going to get it done.
Yeah.
They had planned on Rock and Austin going on last, but with him being in the hospital, they made the decision that, okay, that's probably too, like, we can't risk putting that on last and having them bomb out or having Austin have a problem and them have to go home early. So they decide to move it to the semi-main event. They cut the match down time-wise. I'm guessing it ends up being 18. They probably had about 25 scheduled for it. That feels like a Rock Austin length.
Let me pitch you an idea, okay? Imagine that Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle goes exactly the way it goes and ends the way it does. And then in the main event, Rock and Austin wrestle, and Austin gets paralyzed.
Jesus Christ. This would be the worst night in wrestling history.
It would have... I don't know that... not going to go so far as to say it would have destroyed WWE, but
it would have been really bad.
It would have been brutal.
Like congressional hearings bad.
Yeah. Like your new top star and your old top star are both in the fucking hospital, and they both might be paralyzed.
We're bringing back state athletic commissions bad.
Oh, that's just... And then they would have found out that they knew Kurt Angle's condition beforehand, and they would have gotten way crazy heat over that, and it would have been disgusting. They got very lucky.
I mean, it's a miracle that the Austin Rock match ends up being so good. I mean, they just work. Rock is so good, he can practically wrestle himself, and he almost has to here because Austin can't really bump.
Yeah, Austin takes maybe 5 back bumps in this match, and 3 of them are in a row. And, that's the match.
3 rock bottoms right at the end.
And they just have to figure that out. And, as far as back bumps go, the rock bottom's about the easiest one you can take.
I mean, the other stuff going on at this point, they're negotiating with Goldberg. He's signed. He'll debut the night after this on Raw. Probably too late in the game to get him in a match. I think they were right to hold him until the next night.
Yeah. I mean, is that the first time that the night after WrestleMania really becomes a big deal?
Yeah. I mean, there had been... The one after 14 had some big stuff with, X-Pac showing up.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is the first one that really feels like, oh, this is the year before Lesnar had debuted the night after, but Goldberg showing up was a huge moment.
Yeah. Like it sort of organically, the night after WrestleMania becomes what it becomes. It never really seemed like they intended it to be that. And like over time, it just becomes like, all right, this is just when we do everything important for the whole year in this one night.
So, after all that, we can finally talk about the show.
Oh, there's a show?
Yeah, what? Sunday, March 30th, 2003, at Safeco Field in Seattle, Washington. Sold out, 54,000 in attendance for a $2.76 million gate. That's quite a bit smaller gate than the previous year in Toronto. Smaller arena and cheaper tickets.
And not for nothing, there's a ton of different factors here, but last year they made 16 million. So just for frame of reference.
Yeah. Show only does a 1.0 buy rate for about 550,000 buys. That's down 300,000 buys from the previous year. That's a massive dive.
Let's say if you weren't around at the time, you may not understand like what a massive disappointment this was. But like even now, when you look back, like this is the lowest WrestleMania ever really gets. Like this is a disaster. But
after WrestleMania 14, like
yeah, that's what I mean.
But like before that, but yeah, for this period, it's so far. Everything else, the only other one that's a little low is 26. I don't remember the number for that, but I think it might have been under 700,000.
Right. But I mean, that's obviously when like business softens as a whole. But the fact that like WrestleMania, like 17, 18, and then 20 on through 25, and then after 26, it pretty much is consistently good all throughout that period. It just becomes like a relevant moneymaker no matter what.
It almost stops mattering what's on the card.
Yeah, I mean at this point it literally doesn't matter what's on the card. Like it's just WrestleMania draws because it's the only time a year people actually watch it. It just became a thing. But here, for it to do such a shitty rating and like such a low gate is like this is a fucking disaster. And especially when you're coming off of 17 and 18, which are really the first two big successes you've ever had with WrestleMania since like 3. This is a huge warning sign.
No, I mean I'm sure when they got this number they were like that can't be right. It's hard I can't put my finger. I mean, I know the build wasn't perfect, but this is such a stacked card. I can't believe it just felt like there's something for everybody here, and yet nobody bought it.
But I mean, like that looks when you look at it on paper, yeah, that's true. But again, like we've just gone through and mentioned all the reasons why none of these programs are hot at all. A lot of these matches feel like they were just kind of tacked on right at the very end. If you stopped watching the shows, you're not really going to be hearing about this from your buddies that, oh, hey, like that big Hogan versus McMahon match you've been dreaming about, that's coming up. Like it's not. And WrestleMania itself still doesn't have that luster that it carries it no matter what's on the card. Like the card matters. Yeah. Until like I don't know, like deep into the 20s, like the card still matters. This one, like this card sucks. Like it turns out a lot of really good matches, but in terms of like if you were like a lapsed fan, and a lot of people were at this time, this isn't bringing you back, not even slightly.
The other factor I've heard blamed for this is the transition to digital cable. I don't know how far deep we were into that, but it feels like we had sort of reached the point where it was like if you didn't have digital cable, you couldn't get pay-per-view, and that was shutting a lot of people out.
And that could very well have been the case. That would certainly have eliminated a lot of the casual people who like only ordered WrestleMania, you know what I mean? But I don't know. While that was a big transition, I don't know that it was a cuts 500,000 buyers out of
the
your
month
fucking...
before.
I say the fact that No Way Out was so successful really debunks a lot of those theories.
Yeah, I mean they did almost 500,000 buys for the February pay-per-view the month before this. I mean, unless that was just kind of their ceiling and like all the casual marginal buyers didn't have access to pay-per-view anymore. I don't know. I think it had more to do with just their overall business softening and this card just not being that attractive to casual fans.
And like they put a lot of this is attributed to Lesnar too, because a lot of people who are upset with Lesnar later kind of look back and like, well, Lesnar couldn't fucking draw. It's not that. I mean, it's partially that, because no, he couldn't draw, especially as a babyface. But like, it's not. Nobody here had drawing power at this point. Like, this company didn't have drawing power at this point. This is a bad time, a really bad time.
Ooh, on Heat, Chief Morley and Lance Storm defeated Rob Van Dam and Kane to retain the World Tag Team Championship. That actually sounds like a pretty decent match.
I guarantee you it was actually a pretty decent match. Kane and Rob Van Dam were actually a really good tag team. I liked a lot.
Yeah, they were.
And when they wound up turning Kane, it was because that their team was so strong and beloved that it meant that like he got so much heat when he turned on him. So like that was actually something really good they were doing.
Also on Heat, we've got to talk about this. They did the John Cena rap battle that wasn't. So they had been promoting for the weeks coming into this, John Cena doing like an open rap challenge. And they were negotiating with a bunch of, I've heard Jay-Z, LL Cool J, Fabulous, maybe Ludacris, a lot of names that they talked to, and nobody was ultimately willing to do it. I don't know if money was the issue. I'm sort of guessing everybody was kind of worried that if Cena went into business for himself, they might end up getting shown up. Like, there's no upside for you as a real rapper going up against this white wrestler nobody's heard of.
Either A, you beat him and it's a farce because of course you're going to beat him. Or B, he beats you and your career is dead.
Yeah, like if Jay-Z does this and Cena shows him up, does that ruin Jay-Z's career?
But the other problem too is that this is again about like the people in WWE's office trying to pick rappers for this. Look, most rappers are not freestyle rappers. Most rappers are not battle rappers. That's a very uncommon thing. And the only reason they think that it is a common thing is because 8 Mile has just come out in theaters.
Yes. Their only frame of reference for this is 8 Mile.
And so, like, Fabulous isn't going to battle rap. Jay-Z has never battle rapped anyone in his entire fucking life. It's not going to happen. That's not how it works. So anybody who actually
really
does
speak to John Cena's battle rap. I feel like he had some talent for freestyling, but like, I don't know.
And let's be clear, it would not have actually been a freestyle. It would have been written for him.
Oh, of course.
Let me just put that out there right now.
If you're going to do this, for anybody to agree to do this, they would have had to agree, like, we're going to script the thing out and I'm going to win. And like, on the one hand, if you're WWE, seen as the heel, so I guess having him lose makes sense. But also, it's probably in your best interest for him to like show the guy up and win, because that's going to get your company attention.
What you want to do is find a rapper who's willing to take an attitude adjustment or an FU at the time. Yeah. So like Cena raps, the other guy shows him up, he gives a rapper an FU, and like that's a segment.
And that's your Good Morning America moment.
And this is something like if they were doing this now, they could have made this happen. Like Snoop Dogg would have been so happy to do this, or Flo Rida or whoever.
I mean, John Cena showing up to do Doctor of Thugonomics at WrestleMania last year was one of the highlights of that show.
Yes, it was. And the thing is, like, John Cena is vaguely talented as a rapper. Like, he's like, we're not gonna fucking litigate how good of a rapper John Cena is, because he's not a very good one, but he's at least talented enough to make this gimmick work, and it's still exciting whenever he does it. He's got a good delivery for this stuff. This could have been a really fun segment, but like, they had no idea what they were doing with this. If they had just asked John, I'm sure he could have made something that worked, but I'm sure Vince was just like, who are the rappers that I know? One time Shane brought home a Jay-Z record.
Oh, man. Pop Culture with Vince McMahon would be such an amazing podcast.
Can we get Run DMC?
They did WrestleMania 5. They did the WrestleMania rap.
Yeah, man.
God, they got really good musical guests on those early WrestleManias.
Because those are the people Vince knew. Vince was a relatively young man then.
Opening package features all the top guys talking about the history of WrestleMania and their WrestleMania dreams. I loved this package. This was
I always
perfect.
appreciated it because like WrestleMania was the one day of the year where like even the heels would talk reverently about it.
Yeah.
Like you would hear like The Rock, who has literally been taking nothing seriously for months, be like, WrestleMania is the greatest moment of my life.
This means everything. This is where I can define my legacy.
And like I always loved how sweetly The Undertaker would talk about it. The Undertaker, who rarely cut impassioned promos about anything outside the ring, would always be like, WrestleMania is like fever, man. It's the one night of the year where I'm me, and that's my place.
Going to the arena, huge fireworks show. I really like the look of this show. Just
It's
so
nuts.
smooth and clean. I love the because it's a baseball stadium, because it's the afternoon in Seattle. They're on the West Coast, so it's probably like 4 o'clock when the show starts. We get natural light in for the first part of the show. Just beautiful. I've always enjoyed. I thought baseball stadiums look better than football stadiums. They're just more angles, more scenic. Stuff like having the foul pole in there just looks cool. Looks different than normal.
This feels like the first truly modern WrestleMania to me in terms of look. Like I know 17 was big, but it was just kind of like a bigger version of the normal sets
Yeah,
that they did for
it's just
pay-per-view.
kind of a giant Titantron.
This is the first one where they like incorporate the whole stadium into their design. You know what
The
I mean?
ramp
Like
is so long. The ramp is like a mile long here.
poor little Rey Mysterio is the first man who has to run that ramp, and I swear to God he's running for 25 minutes. Like
Can't believe Hogan made it down this thing. They should have gotten Hogan one of those carts from WrestleMania 3.
yes, just dug it out of storage.
I can't believe they've never brought one of those back as a gag. It would be I don't know how you would use it, but it would be such a perfect sight gag for
They could
somebody.
have had like King Corbin do it at the Rumble instead of people carrying him in. Just have one of the fucking motorized carts.
JR welcomes us to the show. He says it's his 10th WrestleMania, and he's just as excited today as he was for his first WrestleMania in 1993. And then he throws to Michael Cole and Taz at ringside, who will call our opening match. Opener. For the Cruiserweight title, Matt Hardy defends against Rey Mysterio. That is a hell of an opening match.
It's so good. Matt Hardy is so on fire at this.
God, Matt Hardy version 1 is amazing.
Like he's had this whole run through the summer where he was basically like a lackey for Paul Heyman, and first it was Paul Heyman and Brock, then it's Paul Heyman and Big Show, where he's just like
The
doing
feud
little
with The
favors.
Undertaker.
Yes. Like he's just that shitty undercard guy who's just mixing it up with all the main eventers. He's kind of like Jericho was in WCW actually,
Yeah.
where he's just like cutting entertaining heel promos and getting his ass kicked all the time.
So Ray is out first to make his WrestleMania debut. As always, he has amazing ring gear for WrestleMania. This one's a Daredevil costume. I love the cosplaying as movie characters that he's done over the years.
The only bad one was the Joker. We don't talk about that one.
That one didn't work, and JR made that really weird joke about Heath Ledger being dead.
Yeah, that was so weird. We're going to get to that. That's going to be probably next year for WrestleManias, but
5 WrestleManias down the road.
oh my God, that was so weird. But yeah, he looks great. Like Hardy is like so ramped up. He's got Shannon Moore with him, and like
The Matt Fax enter the like Matt Hardy version 1 load in, and it's like, AOL dial up, and then the pop up, the Matt Fax. Matt often wonders how they did WrestleMania without him.
this is Matt's 4th WrestleMania.
Yeah, like just
it's
the
so
pop
good.
up video, brilliant stuff. This had to be Matt's idea.
Oh God, yeah. Nobody else knew what the fuck a quick time
The
video
internet
window was.
Yeah. He's accompanied by the MFer, Shannon Moore, Magnitude follower.
It's such a good gimmick that really works. And his whole thing about like he's so obviously 20 pounds too heavy to be in the cruiserweight division, but he has to cut weight to get in.
Yeah, so they've been doing. I always enjoy the guy who's too big for the cruiserweight division, him having to cut weight to get down there to stay under the weight limit.
This might be, aside from like the Goldberg Jerry Flynn matches that we've talked about in the archives, this might be my favorite 5-minute match of all time.
This is really good.
It is 5 minutes and 37 seconds. It feels like 15 minutes.
The other one that really stands out to me is Owen Hart versus 1-2-3 Kid from King of the Ring.
Yes, that's very good too.
Literally like 3 minutes long, and they pack like 10 minutes worth of stuff into it. But yeah, this is awesome.
If this had gotten 10 more minutes, they could have stolen the show. Like it's that good.
Ray throws Matt out to the floor, hits him with a corkscrew plancha. Man, young Rey Mysterio was incredible.
There's nothing he couldn't do. Like, the fact that he's still on our TVs now makes no sense.
And he's in better shape than he's been in for like 10 years now.
Like, this Rey was probably the most exciting wrestler who's ever lived. And I don't even feel weird about saying that.
Just magic. He was so fast and fluid and flexible and precise.
And he had chemistry with literally everyone. Everyone.
Ray tries for a sunset flip powerbomb off the apron, but Moore blocks it. Matt catches Ray with the side effect. Ray comes back with a seated senton and a springboard crossbody. Ray hits tilt-a-whirl head scissors, then a tornado DDT. Moore trips Mysterio, which allows Hardy to hit the twist of fate, but Mysterio kicks out at 2. Hardy goes for Splash Mountain, but Ray counters with a Hurricane Rana. I always mark out for that spot.
So fucking cool.
Moore puts Hardy's foot on the ropes to break the pin up. Hardy accidentally hits Moore. That allows Ray to hit the 619. He goes for the West Coast pop, but Hardy ducks. Mysterio goes for a victory roll, but Hardy grabs the ropes and he holds Mysterio down for the pin. Packed everything they possibly could have into 6 minutes there.
Just incredible. Like, they haven't figured out exactly what they're doing with Ray yet, because what do you do with a guy like this? No one's ever had a guy like this.
No, and he really doesn't do anything for really until he gets to feud with Eddie in 2005.
Yeah, and without Eddie's death, he never makes it to the heights that he makes it to. That's a sad fact.
Vince had to be talked into putting the belt on him, kicking and screaming, and then they did nothing but job him out once he won it.
Yeah. And now they've come around to the fact that, he's a legend. Yeah, he made it through all of my tests, so now he's one of those people I'll trot out as a legend forever. It's a shame because they basically wasted his best years of just kind of, bumming around, doing stuff. But
backstage, the Miller Lite girls walk into the stadium. I have no memory of what this ad campaign was.
It was exactly what it seems like. It was two
hot girls drink Miller Lite.
Hot girls in like a hot tub drinking Miller Lite. And like that was basically the idea of the ad campaign, is women drink Bud Light too.
Oh, that's not a bad idea.
Okay, but it's not if you're aiming the ad at women. But they weren't.
Yeah.
This is aimed directly at dudes' penises. Like that's where we're at.
They recap the events of Sunday Night Heat, where Nathan Jones was attacked in the locker room by Big Show and A-Train. Nathan Jones was supposed to partner with The Undertaker tonight, but he was stinking things up so badly in their practice for the match that they pulled him out of it.
He sucks so bad that they don't even trust him to get assaulted. They just cut to a shot backstage of him under some chairs.
He couldn't even get punched.
No.
He comes in and does his kicks here, and I'm pretty sure he completely whiffed on the kick in the aisle, and they didn't show it. Yeah.
That's why when they show the replay, they show it from a different angle, because he whiffs completely.
Yeah, so Nathan Jones was this huge dude with an amazing body.
And he had this great backstory that he had been in prison in Australia, and that they throw him in the brig.
Prison in Australia. Yeah, they put him in solitary confinement. He had a nickname, and it was the Colossus of something.
Oh,
whatever the
Bago Road, the Colossus of Bago Road.
Yeah,
and literally, he would get thrown in solitary because every time they let him out, he would fight and beat the shit out of 16 people. He was an unstoppable menace. So
yeah, all great stuff, but unfortunately the bell would ring, and he just had no aptitude for pro wrestling.
No, he was actually wound up being a pretty decent actor, which is funny. His best roles wound up being in martial arts films as the big white guy.
I totally understand how they saw potential here. I don't know why they thought he was going to be a babyface.
Yeah,
Like
that's
everything
a
we just
fucking
explained
mystery.
sounds like he's a heel. Like foreigner, ex-con, big muscle man. Like seems like a bad guy. And he goes away after this. And when they bring him, they try to bring him back. They bring him back in the fall, and they put him on Lesnar's team for Survivor Series. And Lesnar's team is all hosses. It's like him, Big Show, A-Train, Nathan Jones,
And Matt
and Matt
Morgan.
Morgan. Yeah. And then he quits a couple weeks out. He just like doesn't like wrestling and quits the company a couple weeks after that.
But it's just like he's such a heel that it doesn't even make sense. And to have him be with the Undertaker, like, hey, Undertaker, we're just gonna say he's your friend. Like, Undertaker doesn't have friends.
No, but they were trying to do the thing where Undertaker was mentoring all the young guys.
I mean, I get it, but like, it doesn't work.
This was a swing and a miss. This was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Next up, Limp Bizkit, WWE's favorite band in the whole wide world, is introduced so that they can perform Rollin' for Undertaker's entrance.
Well, also you have to understand that they are doing. We didn't really mention that they're doing the song. They're the theme song for WrestleMania 19 is "Crack Addict" by Limp Bizkit. Which, boy, that sentence has aged well.
They did a lot of things to move in the direction of like classing up WrestleMania this year, I feel like. But yeah, the musical choice still not good.
And why this year does Limp Bizkit perform Rollin'? Where was this at like 17? Like, it's such a bizarre choice to put them here. It's probably just because Limp Bizkit needs the money now.
Yeah, by this point, yeah, they're willing to sell out to take some paychecks.
If you bought the album that Crack Addict is on, I want you to send me a Twitter DM because I want to give you your $15 back because I personally feel bad that you did that, and that's something that even I didn't do.
That's not the hot dog flavored water?
No, that's the next one.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Next up, we've got The Undertaker against Big Show and A-Train in a handicap match. This is not one of the more glamorous entries in Undertaker's streak. They tend to not mention this one.
Also, this is such a weird thing because 3 months before this, Big Show is the world champion.
Yeah.
And A-Train, they're trying so hard to make happen out of nowhere. He winds up being like the one who puts Edge out. And like the people backstage loved A-Train so much. Like he was like Fit Finley's like personal project.
I mean, I understand why. It's kind of strange to me that he never got over.
Because he just there's nothing interesting about A-Train. Yeah. He's not that big. His look isn't that good. He doesn't do anything really that wows you. He's just very solid. But like, okay. It doesn't surprise me that he wound up being an incredibly good trainer and that's his role now. Because he's the kind of guy who you would believe like understands everything about wrestling but just couldn't do it themselves. Some people are meant to be trainers. That's A-Train.
Yeah, so Limp Bizkit plays Undertaker to the ring. He comes out on the bike. He gunned that bike going down the ramp.
He was definitely like, I'm not taking 20 minutes to get down this fucking ramp. We're going.
He's definitely enjoying being able to really like hit throttle on that thing for once.
Oh, man. Can we pour one out for The Undertaker here? Because what an impossible situation he's in. Like,
okay.
He has to make this work.
The worst streak opponent has to be Giant Gonzalez. Like, you can't get worse than that.
All the first couple were all kind of shit, other than Jake.
What about King Kong Bundy in 1995? Where would
that one's real bad. Also, I would say top 3 is probably Mark Henry by the time Taker got to him.
They almost had Mark Henry beat him.
They really wanted to.
Vince was so close to doing it. Man.
Yeah.
Taker hits A-Train with a choke slam. Big Show breaks it up. The heels take over. Albert hits the derailer. He just throws him out to the floor rather than cover him. Taker gets an armbar on Big Show, or on Albert, but Show breaks it up with a leg drop. Taker and Train exchange punches. Taker hits him with a DDT. Flying lariat on Big Show, but he turns around into a bicycle kick from Albert. Showstopper on Undertaker. Nathan Jones comes down the aisle. He hits Show with the kick. Jones comes in the ring. He hits Albert with a big boot. Tombstone on A-Train, and we're out of here. That was not very good.
But it wasn't because of Undertaker, because he was trying so hard.
He really did work his ass off here.
He took more bumps in this match than he took the entire year leading up to it. And like he tried so hard. He tried so hard to put over Nathan at the end. There was just nothing here for him to work with. Nothing. Big Show mails this shit in from space. Like, he does not care.
Then the backstage, the Miller Lite girls run into Stacy Keibler and Tori Wilson. And then we go to the announce desk where Jim Ross shouts out the men and women deployed to Iraq, telling them, you're doing the right thing, get this thing done fast, kick their ass, and come home. Didn't work out that way.
Nope.
The invasion had just begun. Shock and Awe was, I think, March 19th. So the war has just started here. So it's the beginning of a very jingoistic period for WWE.
Yeah, let's check the calendar, and the war's still going. So it's been 17 years.
Next up, women's title match. Victoria defends against Jazz and Trish Stratus in a triple threat match.
This match rules.
Yeah, this is good. Trish is out first. She gets a nice reaction. Jazz is out second to complete silence. She has not gotten any more over in the years since WrestleMania 18.
Yeah, we're still at a period where if you're not hot, the crowd does not want anything to do with you.
No. She now has like a smooth jazz entrance theme, which I guess is appropriate.
Oh, Vince was so excited when he got those saxophones on there.
But
he was confused because it was like, hey, what? She's not a babyface though.
Victoria is out third, accompanied by her boyfriend Steven Richards. I enjoyed Psycho Victoria as a character.
Oh, I loved it with like the tattoo theme, which unfortunately is not on the
Yes. Oh, I was gonna say her music sounded weird here. They're dubbing over all the things she said.
Yes, all the things she said was brilliant music. For her relationship with Steven Richards was so kooky and awesome. Like, it really worked. Everything's really working it. Like, Victoria kind of gets forgotten about because she went to TNA and had a truly lackluster run.
Yeah, her and Trish had some good. I loved her and Trish doing like street fights with some revolutionary stuff for the women.
These three, this is the first time that this division really else begins to climb up. Because before this, it's just kind of Trish doing her best to keep the concept of women's wrestling alive. And it finally feels like, okay, we have enough actual wrestlers here that it's working. Like, this match might be the best American wrestling match ever up to this point. It's not that great, but at least it's a match that the crowd takes somewhat seriously. And that is an achievement of its own.
They didn't get dropped in the death spot. Although, actually, to note, the way they structure this card, they put the 5 biggest matches all in a row at the end, which is not how they would do the WrestleMania in later years. Like, now they very much break up the big matches throughout the show.
Yeah, this is New Japan style.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think they just haven't quite figured out how they're going to book these yet. They're not used to WrestleMania having this many big matches. I mean, prior to this, usually there'd be like 2, maybe 3 main event level matches. This one's got 5.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
Trish ends up hitting Stratisfaction on Richards. Victoria sets her up for the Widow's Peak. Trish slips out, hits the chick kick, and gets the pin to a nice reaction.
The crowd loves Trish. Like, it's really fun to watch. Like,
then
no, go ahead.
I was just going on to the next segment.
Yep, go right ahead.
Coach is backstage with The Rock. Rock admits that Austin has beaten him the last 2 WrestleManias. Rock says he learned in Hollywood that Act 1 and Act 2 don't matter. All anyone remembers is Act 3. Tonight we'll see the conclusion of the greatest rivalry the industry has ever seen. One more ride from the jabroni beaten, pie eating, trailblazing, eyebrow raising, not afraid to sweat, not afraid to bleed, because The Rock is going to beat that bald bastard guaranteed.
That's a fucking good promo.
Yeah, it was. Next up, tag title match. Team Angle versus Los Guerreros versus Chris Benoit and Rhino. This one is one fall to a finish, no eliminations. This SmackDown tag division was really on fire in the fall with Angle and Benoit and Los Guerreros and Edge and Rey Mysterio just putting on some absolute classic matches.
Yeah, literally any combination of that was like just the best matches you've ever seen in your life. Like way too good. Like they would put like Mysterio and Edge versus Los Guerreros on for like 30 fucking minutes on SmackDown and it wouldn't decline in ratings. That's how good we're talking.
You had to love Paul Heyman era SmackDown. Notable that Heyman has been removed from his position of power and actually like is not on screen at this point either. He's been sent home for the first time here.
Is this when he listened at the door during Stephanie's meeting, or is that the second time?
Ooh. I think this was that.
Yeah. Or literally like Stephanie's talking shit about him in a phone meeting and they catch Paul literally with like, I always imagine him having like a cup on the door trying to listen inside of it.
I thought he listened in on a conference call that he wasn't supposed to be on.
That's actually what it is. I just think it's funnier in my mind. But like,
and
they literally hear a click of somebody hanging up during the conference call and they found out it was him.
They go and like check the records because they've got the information on who had called in for how long.
Oh my God.
What a nightmare of a company this is.
Yep.
And these conference calls go for like 7 hours. God. So Los Guerreros are out first. Benoit and Rhino make separate entrances second. I don't like when tag team partners come out separately, unless they're both huge stars or they're trying to indicate that like they don't really get along.
I agree. And also, I don't like when Rhino comes out at all.
Like when Rhino's on a wrestling show?
I don't like Rhino. Let's just cut it there.
Team Angle are the champions. They took the belts off Los Guerreros back in November. Everyone gets a showcase. Rhino hits Gores on Haas and Chavo. Guerrero drags him out of the ring. Benjamin manages to get the pin on Chavo. Just nothing really to that. Just getting everybody on the card here.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, Eddie's not where he's going to be like later in the year. Benoit's just kind of spinning his wheels. Team Angle is fantastic, and unfortunately they're going to be broken up after a little while here. But, I mean, right at the moment, this is probably the best tag division in the history of wrestling. Like, other than, like, early 90s All Japan Kings Row.
Backstage, there's an argument between Stacey Torrey and the Miller Lite Girls about whether Vince or Hogan made WrestleMania what it is today.
Yes, because I'm sure they both have very strong opinions about that.
Stimulating stuff there.
Oh, boy. I forget that this is the through line. Like, the through line of WrestleMania 18 is actually fun and good. This through line sucks.
Then we get a video package for the Shawn Jericho match, and that's up next. Jericho is out first in a nice pair of light blue tights. Shawn is out second. He's actually gotten some proper gear with some hearts on it made. Thank God.
Thank God.
They have a bunch of confetti guns for him to shoot off during his entrance, and like half of these things don't work.
It actually creates a really charming moment where like he tries to shoot one off and he looks at the crowd and just kind of shrugs like, sorry. And keeps going.
They start out exchanging holds, and then Jericho gets frustrated and just slaps the shit out of Michaels. Michaels throws him out to the floor, hits him with a baseball slide. Jericho takes over by working on Shawn's back. He goes for a bulldog but gets thrown into the corner. Shawn throws Jericho to the floor and hits a plancha. They fight out on the floor. Jericho gets Shawn in the walls of Jericho out in the aisle, then runs his back into the ring post. Shawn's back was, of course, always the target of his opponents in this era, and it was always really effective because as a fan, I was always worried about it.
Oh yeah, especially since they never really tell you, oh, hey, actually Shawn's back's pretty good. They kind of sell it like, oh, any bad bump and Shawn might be paralyzed and have to retire again. And they just leave that open-ended for us for months.
Shawn tries to get back in the ring. Jericho hits him with a springboard drop kick. Jericho continues to work on the back. He does the forearm and the kip up, but then Shawn kips up behind him, hits an inverted atomic drop, a backdrop, and then a moonsault. Shawn's on fire here.
Man, Shawn, you can tell that there's something different about this match for Shawn. Like, normally he had kind of been, not since the SummerSlam match had he really committed fully to the match, it seems like. Here he's got fire for his first time since he came back. Like, he's really going for it.
Jericho hits a Northern Lights suplex and then the Lion Salt for a 2 count. Shawn goes for a Hurricane Rana, but Jericho blocks it, locks on the walls of Jericho. Shawn manages to get to the ropes. Jericho hits a reverse elbow off the top rope, goes to the corner, tunes up the band, does a little shuffle dance, and nails Shawn with Sweet Chin music.
I mean, you could call it Sweet Chin music. It's really more of like a forward thrust kick because it's clear that like Jericho is not flexible enough to get his leg all the way up there.
Yeah. Shawn pops back up, hits a crossbody off the second rope, catapults Jericho into the corner, rolls him up for 2. Jericho hits a kidney punch to shut down the comeback. He goes for a super back suplex, but Shawn manages to roll out of it and comes down on top for a 2 count. Shawn goes to the top for the flying elbow. Jericho kicks the ref into the ropes to crotch him. Jericho sets up for a superplex. Shawn blocks it, throws him off, hits the elbow drop. He sets up for Sweet Chin music, but Jericho ducks it, locks on the walls of Jericho. Shawn fights out of it, gets to the ropes. Jericho yells at the referee, screams that Michaels tapped out. Shawn manages to hit Sweet Chin music out of nowhere, but he can't make the cover. They both get to their feet. Shawn gets folded up in the corner. Jericho goes for a back suplex. Shawn slips out, rolls Jericho up for the pin. Great match. Just awesome stuff.
It saves both their careers. There's really no other way to put it. Like, this, producing on this level puts Jericho in a new light and basically gives him new life within the company. Being able to turn out a match like this renews Michaels' confidence, and I'm pretty sure this is what makes him decide, like, you know what, I'm doing this full time. Like, fuck it. Like, I can do this. Let's go.
Yeah.
Like, it changes the future of wrestling that this match was so good.
Yeah. Huge match for both guys' careers. You
Absolutely.
can imagine a different world where this doesn't work and Shawn decides, I've had my run, time for me to retire, and Jericho just, falls back into the mid card and stays there.
And then there's what happens after the match, which is what everyone remembers.
Jericho teases a handshake, then a hug, but then he kicks Michaels in the nuts.
They've redone this so many times, and it's never been this good. Because, like, everyone in the arena buys the handshake. Everyone. And then just Michaels grabbing him and then slowly slipping down to the ground is just a stroke of genius.
Yeah. We get backstage. Sylvan is dressed up in his referee gear and goes into Vince's locker room. Then we get the announcement on tonight's attendance, 54,097, which is a new record for the stadium. Then Limp Bizkit performs Crack Addict.
I'm so glad that we got the opportunity to see it performed live. That's really... Imagine you're in that crowd, And for 4 minutes, you're listening to Crack Addict.
I don't know. Everybody probably needed a bathroom break at this point.
Yeah, you're just hearing like the strains of Crack Addict from the bathroom. That's everyone's WrestleMania memory.
Jonathan Coachman is there to introduce the WrestleMania cat fight with the Miller Lite girls. As they're about to wrestle on a bed, Stacy comes out and then Tori. Everyone wrestles and rips their clothes off. Coach gets in the middle of it and he gets his clothes ripped off. This was just an embarrassing mess.
I remember thinking at the time that like this felt so out of place. Like we had come somewhere different with the women's wrestling where it just didn't feel like this is the way it worked anymore. And I was like, you know what? I think that this is kind of going away. I feel like
Nope.
in a couple years we won't see any more of this. And then the Johnny Ace era comes.
Yeah.
But like we were so on the cusp of this being not the norm. And then Johnny Ace.
And from one embarrassing mess to the next we've got the World Heavyweight Championship match as Triple H defends against Booker T.
Since we've done a lot of time here, like, do you want to just skip to the end? Because like it's a good match. Triple H is clearly trying to do Sting versus Ric Flair. Like that's what he's trying to make this match be. So basically he just takes offense for Booker T for like 20 minutes. Like that's good.
I have a couple things I want to talk about here.
Okay.
Triple H's purple trunks.
Yes, they look
Do you
great.
like them? I know. I said earlier I thought the colored trunks were kind of weird. I thought this was a good look. I also really like the year after this he wears white boots, which I thought looked really cool.
The fucking like, and there's nothing more heelish than Triple H wearing white boots. It just looked like, you fucking weirdo. Why are you doing that? Because it's just so far removed from what we liked about Triple H, and I'm sure that's what the idea was.
There's a funny exchange where King is like needling JR about how Booker's from WCW. He's like, don't you think WCW was a joke? And JR's like, well, you're damn right it was.
Poor JR having to say that. But I bet you if you asked JR, he'd be like, I never worked for WCW. I worked for NWA.
I loved that Nick Patrick did referee instructions before the match. I don't understand why that isn't standard for world title matches.
It's such a good touch. That's one thing they don't do a lot these days that I point out and be like, I'm so glad that they do that. But like they make a big deal of title matches now. Like they really didn't then. It's just like they always do like introduce both guys in their hometowns and like they'll explain the instructions.
The boxing style like in-ring introductions.
Yes. I'm so glad they started doing that during like Cena's era, and like it really stuck, and it's a great thing. Like it always works.
Yeah. They did the referee patted them both down, like added some little touches to make this feel like it was an important match.
Absolutely.
There was a weird exchange on commentary where King said that Booker T was born on a pool table. JR asks him where he heard that, if it was Finkel, and then he says that Finkel was drunk last night.
What the fuck?
I don't know what was happening here.
What are we even talking about?
Yeah. So as you pointed out, Booker just whoops Triple H's ass. Triple H breaks out the Indian Deathlock, which I think is awesome. That was like an annual thing. You would only do that at WrestleMania.
And you would always bust that out when it was like real serious. And he was like, because Triple H really only had like 4 moves. So then he was like, oh shit, I better bust out my weird shit.
Yeah. Speaking of weird shit, Booker hit the Harlem Hangover.
Dude.
So if you've never seen that, it's a front flip leg drop off the top rope, which is a kind of crazy move for anybody to do, but especially a guy Booker T's size.
So the way Booker T would normally do it is you'd be about halfway across the ring because Booker T can jump 85 miles. Yeah. And so like he'd stretch his leg out so that he'd land like 5 feet back from you, but his leg would like briefly come across your neck, right? That's the way it's supposed to work. Triple H positions himself like he's going to take the shooting star press from Billy Kidman, and he's got to be as close to the ropes as possible. So like Booker T looks down and he just says fuck it and jumps. So he does like a full 450 and then just like has nowhere for his body to go. So he lands and literally like he tries to turn his leg sideways so that he doesn't wind up crushing Triple H's face. And he just lands his whole fucking thigh right on his face. It's not great.
Yeah, this looked like it was incredibly brutal. Like landed with all his weight right on Triple H's face. Looked like he could have smashed him.
And this is only a couple months after Triple H has like,
Yeah.
what was like his fucking larynx
Yeah,
torn?
the Elimination Chamber match. Van Dam hit him with a 5-star frog splash, like off the top of the chamber, and yeah, broke his larynx, I think.
It was something in his throat, yeah.
Yeah, like they had to take him to the hospital, like coughing up blood. It was rough.
So like he's just had a lot of bad luck right about now. But it's his own fault for being so fucking close to the turnbuckle, man. Back up.
Booker makes the cover. Flair puts Triple H's foot on the ropes. And then in the finish, Triple H catches Booker with pedigree. He takes, I don't know, 26 seconds to make the cover.
I counted. It was 13 seconds.
Okay.
It feels so much longer. Because anytime anyone's taken anywhere close, imagine all the matches that you've seen where like a guy hits his finish, but he's too tired to make the cover. He crawls over and pins him. That's probably like 5 or 6 seconds. It sounds like that's a short amount of time, but that's like forever in a match where things are just kinetic and moving around all the time. So this is like twice as long as that. Triple H just lies down dead to the point where like the ref should be making the 10 count. Okay? Then he crawls over, puts one arm over Booker, and Booker stays laying.
Yeah.
I've never seen this in a match ever, before or since.
Regardless of whether or not you think Triple H was trying to bury Booker here, if you were trying to bury somebody, this would be how you would do it. Like, that's always a kick out, by the babyface at least. If it's the heel, slow cover to build drama, okay, but it was still such a long pause. Like, I can understand selling for a second or two, but 13 seconds to cover and then only gets his arm on him, that should not keep a main event guy down.
But here's the thing, is everyone blamed Triple H for this. This is not a thing that he called in the match. That's not how this works, right? This is how the finish was set up. It had to have been. Because otherwise Booker would not have gone along with this.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can imagine it just being a thing like Triple H is selling and he just kind of gets carried away selling and takes forever to make the cover.
I mean, maybe. It's just, I defy you to find a match where the finish kills the babyface this hard. This is the thing, is that the storyline is egregious. It is a horrible, horrible storyline. The fact that Booker T loses is egregious. And then in the way he loses is one of the worst I've ever seen. So all the way around, this is probably the shittiest burial of an up-and-coming babyface ever? Maybe ever.
Booker's dead after this, and
Booker doesn't have life for another 4 years after this.
He doesn't. He really doesn't ever recover from this. Like, he finally, with King Booker, he ends up getting the world title, but
that's only because there's no one else to take it.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, this was just sad.
It just sucks. Like, he built himself back up so strong,
and then they took him out back and shot him.
And like I told you that, like, it was Booker T on Raw and it was Edge on SmackDown, and it seemed like the future was in place, right? And then they kill Booker and Edge can't stay healthy. So the two people who were supposed to carry them into like WrestleMania 20 just don't. Like, they're not there for that anymore.
No,
like
that's how we get Benoit and Guerrero, and that ends up being pretty great. But yeah, that would have been better for the company if they'd had some young studs ready to go for WrestleMania 20 instead of two veterans.
That was supposed to be Goldberg and Edge. I just want you to remember that in the back of your head when we get to WrestleMania 20, that they thought they had Edge and they had Goldberg, and that was the plan. Doesn't come true.
Next up is the video package for Hogan versus McMahon. This was really good. Ton of clips from the 80s, just kind of taking us all the way through to the present day.
Yeah, this is good stuff. Like, I was not hyped for this match, not one fucking iota. But this is pretty good.
Hogan is out first to a ridiculous pop. Crowd is going crazy for him. WrestleMania with the Hulkster was always special.
Yeah, it's just funny because, like, you couldn't even say that, like, Seattle was or wasn't a Hogan town. I'm not sure he had ever wrestled there before.
I'm sure they ran Seattle back in the day, but now it's not a big WWF town. This is Hogan's last WrestleMania match, as crazy as that sounds.
I mean, he did do that thing with Muhammad Hassan later.
Yeah, it wasn't a match. It was just a moment. Like, he appeared at WrestleMania 21. I might be forgetting an appearance or two after that. But, yeah, I mean, yeah, he was at WrestleMania 30 with the whole Superdome, Silverdome thing. But kind of shocking that they didn't get another, because he has matches after this. He wrestles Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam in 05. He wrestles Randy Orton at SummerSlam 06. Then he goes to TNA, and by the time he gets done with that, he was past the point where he could get in the ring.
You can hear all about that in the archives of the Lawcast.
Yeah. Vince is at second. He is so fucking big. He's got a way better physique than Hogan does.
It's kind of outrageous, actually, how big he is.
Traps are so big.
Oh, man.
Oh, my God. So, checking on their ages, Hogan is 49, Vince is 58. So,
Vince is 58?
A combined 107 years old.
And they are about to have arguably the best match on this show.
What was your favorite? I mean, I'd probably give it to Jericho and Michaels, but this is clearly the match that, like, fulfilled its potential the most. This match could not have possibly been any better.
Yeah, it's Jericho and Michaels, but, like, this match is so beyond what it should have been that it almost, like, blows you away.
The referee is not Sylvan. It's a real referee, but I'm sure he'll be making an appearance later.
It's so weird to me that that's his debut is as the corrupt referee.
Yeah. Like, I don't even remember if when they did La Resistance, they, like, referenced that was him.
I don't think they did.
McMahon slaps Hogan. Hogan double legs him and pummels him. Vince hits a clothesline, some right hands. They do a test of strength. Vince gets Hogan down to his knees. They go to the floor. Vince gets a chair. Hogan ducks it, and Vince hits the post. Hogan then obliterates Vince with the chair, and Vince does a sick blade job.
Just like probably the most vicious one he's done since the cage match with Austin.
It's at the end of this year. He has the Buried Alive match with Undertaker where he cut way too deep.
Yes.
And, like, looked like he almost bled to death.
Yeah, I forgot about that one.
That's a sick one. Vince gets the chair, hits a series of shots on Hogan. Hogan also blades. This feud is so brutal, but it's just like, what else can they do?
And it's sort of like, this is the template for when you have old guys in a match. It's like, look, you got to have a lot of extra shit. They're not doing anything in the ring. Like, you got to, like, come up with a lot of weird shit for them to do.
This is what the Vince Brett match was missing. Vince bleeding everywhere.
Yeah. But by then, they couldn't do that anymore.
No, they couldn't do chair shots to the head. All the fun was gone.
He had to actually try to wrestle. Ugh.
Vince sets up a ladder, puts Hogan on the announce table. Vince climbs up the ladder and hits a leg drop off it through the table. He was probably 3/4 of the way up the ladder. I can't believe he did this.
This can only be compared to when, like, Flair was in that TLC match with Edge, which was like pure irresponsibility to like let him take bumps like that. Vince, just to reiterate, if you haven't thought about Vince recently, is not a professional wrestler.
No.
A leg drop is a very dangerous bump to do. You can easily break your tailbone.
And he's nearly 60 years old.
And he weighs probably 30 pounds of muscle more than he should.
Yeah.
It's a problem.
This is a guy who 2 years after this tore his quad sliding into the ring, and he was doing this shit here.
Sold it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. If he had broken his tailbone and both his quads, he would have just finished the match.
Wrestling.
Vince McMahon is a seriously crazy person.
McMahon drags Hogan into the ring and covers him. Hogan kicks out. Vince grabs a lead pipe from under the ring. This is where we get the famous shot of the bloody Vince peeking up over the ring apron. This is incredible. This was art.
Let me paint you a word picture, ladies and gentlemen. This is a cinematographer's masterpiece. They must have arranged this in some way beforehand, or Vince signaled somebody to get the camera shot on him, because otherwise they couldn't have done it this perfectly, because they cut to like a close-up of like the canvas and the bottom rope. And like nothing's there when they cut to it. It's just like a close-up, and slowly you see Vince's head rise up like a shark cresting the waters with its teeth. And literally, like, he's got this deranged smile on his face, and he's like looking back and forth with this like evil, like he they don't see me look. And his face is literally covered in blood. His blade job is so jagged, you can see like a lot of blade jobs are just like straight across, and you really only see the blood, you don't see the cut, but you can see the cut that he's made into his head. It is brutality. And it's almost like a comedy spot in this match, because he's so fucking cartoonishly villainous when he comes up here. It's beautiful. It's my favorite moment from this entire show.
Hogan hits a low blow. At this point, a man in a trench coat gets in the ring, and it's Roddy Piper.
How much did you freak out?
Ape shit. Yeah. Piper hasn't been in the WWF forever at this point.
And like, we had seen him in that pre-taped video, but it was a pre-tape. Like, you don't think that that's going to amount to anything.
No. I don't think anybody expected Piper to show up here.
Piper's back to get his fucking win back from WCW.
Piper teases he's going to hit McMahon, then he turns and nails Hogan with the pipe.
No one in their right fucking mind thought he came back as a babyface. Now, let's be clear about that.
Hogan once again kicks out. Vince tries to get the pipe. The ref tries to stop him, so Vince knocks him out. Sylvan runs down to take over as the referee. Vince hits another pipe shot, a leg drop. Hogan kicks out. Hogan hulks up, takes out Vince. He goes after Sylvan, hits 3 right hands, a big boot, the leg drop, 2 more leg drops, and he makes the cover, gets the 1, 2, 3. What a ridiculous fun match.
It was everything you could have possibly wanted it to be and more. Like, it was just Vince. I talked earlier about fucking Undertaker going all out to make his match work. Vince sold his soul to make this match work.
Yeah, I mean, who could have possibly thought this would be this good?
Nobody.
I think most people probably thought this was going to be a disaster, understandably.
I certainly did.
A 50-year-old against a 60-year-old.
And they not only made this shit work, they made it sing.
Ooh. Vince is laying in a pool of his own blood. Shane McMahon comes down to the ring to check on Vince. He had really not been on TV at all. He did one like random appearance when Vince was teasing he was going to fire Bischoff, and Bischoff was like, well, who else is going to run Raw? And like Shane rolled the window of a limo down to reveal it was him. And then he was in a training montage with Vince like a couple weeks before this, but he's had no role on TV, so I thought this was kind of a weird appearance.
It's very weird. It's almost like he was just at Gorilla and was genuinely worried about Vince's health at the end of this, which would be totally reasonable.
Yeah, I mean, him and Hogan just have a little moment where Shane's just like, "Hey, I'm not here to start anything. Just want to check on my dad."
Say,
I would imagine that we're thinking they'll do Vince and Shane teaming up against Hogan at some point down the line.
would have made sense.
Yeah. So, I mean, after this, some dumb stuff proceeds to happen. Vince fires Hogan, and then they bring in Mr. America, and that gets cut short because pretty sure Hogan got his WrestleMania check and wasn't happy with it, so he took off.
Oh no, that got cut short. Oh no.
Yeah. What a shame we missed that one out. Hogan got the check and was like, "Oh, well, that's nice. So where's the other half, brother?"
Oh, Hogan. There you
Found out
go.
that didn't work quite as well as it did back at WrestleMania 2.
Hey, brother, I think you're gonna have to pay me another million or I'm not coming back. Oh, okay, bye. Oh, wait, brother, that's not what I meant.
I'm sure nobody was happy with the check they got for this WrestleMania. Between the show not doing that well and there being so many big matches that they had to divide the money up so many ways, I'm sure nobody got the payday they were hoping for.
Oh, they can't have. Like, this had to have been a miserable one. Probably the lowest WrestleMania payoff since the Attitude Era began.
Yeah, it would have to. I mean, it's just like it did way fewer buys than the other ones around this time. And there's five like you think about it, like gotta pay Rock and Austin, like gotta pay Hogan, gotta pay Triple H. Angle and Lesnar went on last. They got to get some nice checks. Like, I assume Vince gets paid a pay-per-view bonus when he wrestles. Like, I don't know exactly how they do that, but yeah, like I'm sure Booker got the short end of the stick here.
Oh, I guarantee it, yeah.
Yeah, like somebody was going to get fucked over here, and I'm sure it was going to be Booker.
I'm sure, and maybe Vince didn't take a check or something like that, but I don't know how much I believe that.
Yeah. I don't. Yeah, I generally don't know how. Like Vince's. I know that like Triple H and Stephanie, and I'm sure Vince have like two different contracts. Like they
Yeah,
have they get compensated executives. They also get paid as talent. I don't know how it worked with the pay-per-view bonuses.
me neither.
Then we get a video package for Rock versus Austin. Uh, Rock is out first. I love this. The Hollywood entrance is so cool. I don't know how to describe the music, kind of dreamlike music playing as we get all the shots of LA from a helicopter, and then just is cooking, and his music starts playing.
The first time that music ever happens,
Yeah.
and like that moment where you're like, it's like 3 minutes long, and you're like, what the fuck are we watching?
Yeah, what is this?
It's just random footage of Los Angeles. Like, what is this? And then that moment where you start to figure it out, and then it comes in, it's like, is cooking. It's just,
Crowd explodes.
it's beautiful, and it never stopped being cool. Like, honestly, like every time I played like SmackDown versus Raw from that year, that would be my
Yeah.
music every fucking time.
Austin is out second to a big reaction. He has OMR on the front of his vest, which stands for one more ride. So he knew far enough in advance of this match that he got a vest made that said that. I don't know if those letters were ironed on or how that worked.
Yeah, it's pretty cool though, isn't it?
Yeah. Austin gets the advantage to start with right hands. He goes for a stunner, but Rock blocks it and bails out. Austin chases him out to the aisle and beats him up. Austin slams Rock into the steps. Back in the ring, Austin continues to dominate. He gets in the ref's face. That allows Rock to hit him with a chop block. Rock hits another chop block out on the floor, works over Austin's knee, rams it into the ring post. Austin recovers to hit some right hands. He telegraphs a backdrop and gets kicked in the face. Just to do the bump count, Austin hasn't taken a back bump yet.
Nope, he is not.
Rock gets him in the sharpshooter. Austin makes the rope. Rock continues to work the knee. Rock then puts on Austin's vest. This is probably my favorite part of this match.
This is basically the entire story of the match. It's just like Rock trying to embarrass Austin, and then he puts on the vest and immediately gets his ass kicked.
Yeah, spat some water on him, which wasn't a good idea.
Oh, no, it was not.
They do a double clothesline. Austin hits the Fez press and elbow drop, mud hole stomp. Rock hits a big clothesline. He kips up, but he turns around and Austin hits him with the rock bottom. Rock kicks out at 2. Then Rock hits Austin with the stunner. Austin kicks out at 2. Austin hits the stunner. He can't make the cover right away. When he finally covers, Rock kicks out.
God, what a great sequence. Like, they didn't invent stealing finishers from each other, but they like elevated it to such an art that just became the way it worked from then on.
They are I don't really remember that being a thing before them.
I mean, it had been done like here or there. Like other people would like try to do the tombstone on Undertaker, but it wasn't like a strategy in the match would be like, oh, I'm going to try to do a stunner to throw him off. Like that kind of originates here.
Rock hits a low blow behind the ref's back. Then the people's elbow, but Austin moves out of the way. Austin goes for the stunner. Rock blocks it, hits a spine buster. He goes to do the people's elbow again, takes the vest off and throws it away, hits the elbow. Austin kicks out again. Rock hits a rock bottom, gets 1, 2. Austin kicks out. Rock stalks Austin, hits another rock bottom. 1, 2. Austin kicks out again. Now imagine if this is a career match.
Yeah, like he just won't stay down. And you see the look on Rock's face where he's just like, oh shit, maybe I actually can't beat Austin.
What if he just can't beat him? What if he's unbeatable? What if he can't beat Austin at WrestleMania?
And I would have actually liked it if they had sold that even more. If like Rock was like afraid to go near him, like fuck. Yeah. I didn't account for the idea that maybe I just couldn't do this.
Rock stalks him. He sets up. He hits a thunderous rock bottom. Gets him way up for this one. Covers 1, 2, 3. Finally did it. Rock gets the win. Austin goes out on his back the way any traditional wrestler would. Puts Rock over in his final match.
And I love that last moment because you can clearly imagine Austin being like, this is the last bump I'll ever take.
Yeah.
I'm going all the way up. Like he jumps his ass like he was taking a cane choke slam.
Yeah.
Like almost to the point where like he's out of Rock's grip. Like he's just leaps.
Just one of those things that sums up the kind of wrestler he was. Like if he's going to do it, he's going to do it the right way.
The last rock bottom you see him take is going to be the best rock bottom you've ever seen him take. That's Steve Austin.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, to hear him talk about it, his anxiety about this match, as much as anything else, wasn't like, what if I get paralyzed? What am I going to do? Like when I can't wrestle anymore? It was, what if I can't? What if I have a bad match? Like, what if I can't put on the match that like Rock deserves, that the fans want to see, that's like deserving of my final match, and like just so Steve Austin.
And the best moment from this match, like the thing that even to this day almost makes me tear up a little bit whenever I watch this, is that moment right after Rock pins him. And they're both Rock's just sitting in the ring looking at Austin, and Austin's on the ground. And like they thank each other. And like they have
Rock like pushes tells Earl Hebner, like, get the hell out of here. Like, let us have a moment here.
And like Rock like thanks him and says that he loves him. And Austin says, I love you too. And it's like, look, I'm not going to go on a rant about toxic masculinity right now, but like it often prevents men from having moments like this.
These are the two manliest men you can imagine.
And they've just, their whole careers, they fought each other. They've scratched and clawed to get past each other. And in this moment where Austin is done and Rock is done, and they just look at each other and they thank each other for the journey they've been on together and what they accomplished together. In this last special moment where it had to be each other because they defined each other's careers. That's beautiful. Like that's a loving, tender moment.
And that's a good note, is like these guys were not friends. Like these guys did not get along. They were competitive. Austin kind of buried Rock to management when he was coming up, the way top guys always seem to when there's somebody who's competition. And yet, in this moment, they've put all that aside. Like, Austin really felt like he needed to do the favors for Rock on the way out, and Rock could not be more honored that Austin is putting him over at WrestleMania.
Because it meant something. Like,
Yeah.
it genuinely meant, like, you want me to have your last match and you wanted me to beat you? Like, that's incredible. You could have chosen anyone. And that we came through all of this and can leave on good terms is special.
Yeah. A different time before everybody lost to everybody and wins and losses didn't matter at all. I mean, Steve Austin did not do a lot of jobs, and here he does one 100% clean in the middle of the ring to Rock's finish at WrestleMania. Can't get bigger than that.
And I think, like, Rock was never one who, like, was allergic to doing jobs or anything, but I think that's one of the reasons he wanted to come back and do it for John. Is that, like,
Yeah.
Austin did it for me,
Yeah.
I do it for the next guy. That's how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was basically right. I mean, he did that kind of joke match with Eric Rowan, but, like, last real match was him putting Cena over at WrestleMania.
Yep. And that's the way it should be. And I'm sure Cena put over 5,000 people. So,
Yeah.
like.
But I would imagine, I doubt we've seen John Cena's last match, and I expect he will come back and put somebody over. I mean, I can't tell you what his most recent match was off the top of my head.
God, I'm sure it was just some random shit.
I think,
honestly.
Did him and Lashley team up in Australia?
I mean, that sounds right. I don't know. It wasn't important. Whatever it was will not be John Cena's last match.
I don't think so. I don't think we're going to see a lot more of him, but I'm sure he's got one more WrestleMania in him.
I would imagine he's just waiting for the next guy to make themselves known so that he
As
can
part of
put
the
him over.
issue is right now I don't know who he put over.
Like, he's not going to do another job to Reigns. Like, maybe if McIntyre gets over, it'll be like, all right, I'm coming back to do a
Wouldn't
job.
count on that.
Yeah, me neither, buddy.
All right. It's finally main event time. Video package for Angle versus Lesnar. Stipulations and other stuff. If Kurt is disqualified or counted out, he loses the title. I don't know if Heyman is banned from ringside, but he is not there. He had a match with Lesnar a couple weeks before this where he got his ass kicked to write him off TV. And I don't think he comes back until the fall when they make him the GM.
I'm pretty sure.
If anyone interferes on Angle's behalf, he loses the title. And Lesnar has his ribs taped up because Angle attacked him with a 2x4 on SmackDown a couple days before this.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Cole references that Angle lost 7 pounds during his training for this match. I always love little notes like that about how hard somebody's been training for the big match.
Yeah, it's very cool. And he looks thin too. Like, he looks like he's in amazing shape. That was never the problem.
Crowd is pretty quiet. I don't think they're not incredibly into this, and I think they're getting a little worn out.
Yeah, that's the problem with, like, the 5 hot matches in a row. Is like,
as much as we said, like, there's no such thing as not being able to follow. Like, there's got to be an upper limit of just, like, how many times. And, like, there was video packages to break this up, but it wasn't like there were long breaks in here.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is that it works if you know with a match that you have at the very end is the match they want to see the most. Yeah. So, like, for example, in this past year's Wrestle Kingdom, like, Okada versus Naito was the match everyone wants. So even though you have a ton of white hot matches before that, you know your fans are still invested because the match they paid to see is still later. That's not the case here. People did not pay to see Lesnar versus Angle.
No, but this is just going on last out of necessity. They were afraid to put Austin and Rock on last because they didn't know if Austin was going to be able to deliver. Like, here, even though Kurt's coming in with his neck issues, like, hard to imagine these guys aren't going to deliver a good match.
I mean, I kind of feel like they did. Go on. I'm not going to do this yet.
They start out with chain wrestling, which is very different from what you're used to in a WWE main event. He counters a charge from Angle with a power slam. Angle hits him with a huge German suplex, but Lesnar pops right up and press slams Angle. Kurt German suplexes Brock into the turnbuckle, which is the only time I've ever seen him do that.
Yeah, that's not usual for him at all. That's like a Seth Rollins spot.
Yeah. Angle goes to work on the back and the ribs. He gets Lesnar in a choke. Lesnar manages to stand up with Kurt on his back and runs him back into the corner. Huge belly-to-belly suplex from Angle. Lesnar really got up for that one.
Yeah, he did.
Lesnar hits a spine buster and both guys are down. He hits a massive overhead belly-to-belly suplex and then another one. Angle recovers, hits the rolling German suplexes, 4 of them in a row. This is just an amazing athletic showcase.
Especially, like, suplexes more than anything require, like, neck and core power. Because once you get somebody up above your shoulders, it's really just your neck that's holding them there. He doesn't have a neck.
No, it's insane that he's doing all this with a career-threatening neck injury.
It's fucking nuts. Like, he could have just chosen to do stuff that didn't require him to use his neck muscles primarily, but that's not what he does.
Yeah.
Fucking Angle Slam is just neck. That's all that's propelling people up.
And it's one thing to do... Yeah, it's impressive to do 4 German suplexes. You could just as easily just do 1.
Right. Like, he could have been a lot more responsible about this, and he just doesn't give a shit.
Lesnar goes for the F5. Angle counters it into the ankle lock. I love Kurt Angle's counters.
That's what made his matches with Benoit so special, is that literally they were just like 20 straight minutes of flowing into counters.
Ankle lock, crossface, ankle lock.
Just like any move, you can turn it into your finish. Like, it's beautiful.
Angle transitions it into a half Boston Crab, and Lesnar gets to the rope. Kurt charges Brock. He gets backdropped over the top rope. Kurt gets back in the ring, hits a German suplex so big he flips Lesnar over onto his stomach.
I feel like this was the match that Lesnar came in and was just like, I'm going to show people what I can do. Because this is the match where, like, Lesnar's like, I'm going to do crazy flip shit none of y'all have ever seen. Which will obviously affect the finish.
Angle with the angle slam. Brock kicks out. Angle goes for another angle slam. Lesnar counters with a cradle. Kurt kicks out. Lesnar hits the F5. Kurt kicks out of that. Cole says that's never been done before, and I think he's right. Before that, he said nobody had ever kicked out of the angle slam. I can't believe that's true at this point.
That's a fucking joke.
Kurt picks Brock's angle, gets the ankle lock. Lesnar escapes, hits another F5. Rather than cover, he goes up to the top rope, and we get the fateful, infamous moment here.
Now, let me ask you a question. How would you feel about this move in this match if he hits it?
Amazing. The coolest thing I've ever seen.
Yes. And it still is very cool. It's unfortunate because he's done this dozens of times. This is not a problem for him to do it. But
yeah, and for a long time I thought the problem was Angle was too far away, but then I saw the clips of him hitting it, and he would hit it on guys this far across the ring.
But the problem was he'd never hit it after a 20-minute match.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
He struggles to get his footing on the top rope. You can see his right foot kind of slips.
And he's also added a lot of muscle mass since he was in OVW.
Bigger now than when he was in OVW. So more weight, and he doesn't quite get the push off he needs. So he doesn't manage to rotate all the way around. So he only gets, he gets most of the way there, but it comes down right on his head.
There are also there are 3 ways to do the shooting star. There's the Billy Kidman way, which only Billy Kidman does, and it's stupid and insane, and nobody should ever do it. There's the normal way where, like, your Evan Bournes do it, right? Where it's like a swimming pool dive, where, like, you just grab your ankles and you rotate back and it's smooth. And then there's the way that, like, Brock does it, and some other people do it like this too, where it's like a 3-part move, where you jump up and out, you fold in, you spin around, and you're already ready to, like, splash before you're even, like, on your descent, right?
Yeah.
That's the most athletic way, and that's the way Brock does it. But the problem is that, like, he knows he's got to jump far out. So he jumps way up high into the air, and then he's like trying to position himself, and he doesn't get around all the way. And I don't think he realizes it because it's been so easy for him before. And he just doesn't have like the core power to get all the way around in time. And then and when you're up like that, you don't really know where you're going to hit. So I think right until the moment he hits the ground, he probably thinks he's right on target. So he doesn't think he needs to rotate more. And it's just, he just head plants into his fucking shoulder blade. Like, it's the worst possible way to fall. It's horrible.
Yeah. So we have a guy, 280 pounds, crashing and burning off the top rope, having done like this front flip and generated all that force to throw himself across the ring. He easily could have broken his neck here.
Easily.
If his neck weren't so strong and so muscular, he probably would have.
I was watching this show with somebody who was in school to be an EMT, and he literally leapt off the couch and said, he's dead. Like, he broke his neck. When you land at that angle, you break your neck. That's just how that happened. He like pulled out his textbook to show me implant wounds for people with neck injuries. And literally like one of them was like at that same angle. And we were like rewinding it and stopping it and playing it. Like, I genuinely thought that Brock Lesnar was never going to wrestle again. Like, I genuinely thought that was true.
Yeah. So this next part feels like it goes on for an eternity, but it's like 30 seconds. So Brock is fucked. He's obviously got a concussion. The shooting star press was clearly going to be the finish of the match. They've got to improvise something. Kurt covers Brock, like yells kick out at him because he can see he's glassy-eyed and doesn't know what's going on.
And maybe the most incredible example of a person calling an audible in the ring ever, he gives himself an F5.
Yeah, like he just sort of throws himself up on Brock's shoulders and spins off.
Like, it's incredible. And then like he just like, okay, now cover me, come on, over here.
I mean, you can see Brock has no idea what's going on. I mean, I've seen him interviewed, and he says he doesn't remember any of this. Like, it went black when he did the shooting star. Like, when they like shoot him during the celebration, you can see he doesn't know where he is or what's going on.
It is the most clear example of a concussion. Like, you could teach it in schools. Like, he is not present at all.
Oh. So yeah, I mean, we're trying to have our wrestle. Brock hits the F5, pins Angle. They're trying to do the celebration, but like Brock can't really even stand up. Angle is also got to be in pretty rough shape after all he's been through too. So it's not exactly the triumphant moment we were looking for.
No, this is a disaster. Like, they play it off well enough that it's not like a gigantic failure. You know what I mean? Like, they kind of get away with it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a reason why the botch is what's indelible about this show. Like, it's probably the most high-profile botch in the history of professional wrestling.
Yeah. And, I mean, oh, man. Very fortunate he was not paralyzed. Easily could have been paralyzed on that bump.
Isn't it Ric Flair that says that, like, hey, man, if he had never amateur wrestled, that motherfucker would have a broken neck? Like, that's...
Yeah. Yeah, in that WrestleMania documentary, Flair says that, like, if he hadn't done so many neck bridges doing amateur wrestling, like, he would have broken his neck, that was the only thing that saved him. I think any normal person taking that fall would have broken their neck.
And literally, that's the reason why, if you ever see, like, dojo training in Japanese wrestling, 95% of it is neck bridges. Because, like, 95% of wrestling is neck. Like, it's core and neck. And, like, all the fucking shit with your arms and your traps and whatever, that's all meaningless. Like, that's most of what happens in wrestling is not getting your neck broken.
Running theme of this show, if you haven't noticed, neck problems.
Yes.
Edge, Kurt Angle, Steve Austin. It's just going around.
Strengthening your neck is the thing that extends your career the most.
Could save your life.
That's why a lot of Japanese wrestlers last forever. That's why their knees go before their necks in Japan, and that doesn't happen in America, and it's not a fucking mystery.
Kurt and Brock manage to get to their feet and shake hands and embrace after the match, and we go off the air. Things got ugly after the show in the locker room. Brock eventually made it backstage and refused medical attention. Like, he was just like a wounded animal, refused to let anyone touch him. Like, finally Gerald Briscoe got up to him and like got him to calm down. I think Bruce Pritchard was the first one to try it, and Brock threw him across the room.
Yeah, I don't really think that Brock wants to hear from Bruce Pritchard at that particular time. No. But then old Briscoe the shooter comes up, and Brock's like, well, I better talk to him.
Yeah, Briscoe would have hooked him.
Yep.
Yeah, Brock didn't go to the hospital. Neither did Angle. It's insane. Like, how can you not take him to the hospital after that?
And this is also a time where, like, there's not so much public scrutiny on WWE. Like, now, if, like, this happened to Roman Reigns and he didn't go to the hospital and that they didn't make him, it would be on SportsCenter the next day.
Like, an actual scandal.
Like, investigative reporting. Why didn't WWE take care of its employee?
Yeah. Kurt, like, made it through the curtain, got back to the locker room, like, got his clothes off, got in the shower, and collapsed. Like, I think the adrenaline wore off, and just the shock of everything his body had been through hit him, and he went down. And I heard it described as, like, he's in the shower with hot water running on him, but he's shivering because his body is just shut down.
That's terrifying, man.
Yeah. And he didn't go to the hospital either. I think both guys actually ended up going to the WrestleMania party that night.
They barely even give him a break. Like, he's, like, back on the road. Like,
Yeah, Kurt didn't get the neck fusion. And I don't know, did he ever get the full neck fusion surgery? I think he just... This is when they invented, like... He was the first guy to get, like, the quickie surgery, where they just, like, did something to relieve the pressure, and he only missed a couple months. He's back by July.
Well, that's when they invented it. They invented it, and he was the guinea pig. Like, he was willing to try it, even though they were like, we haven't really tested this yet. We don't know if this is going to work.
He's insane.
Yeah. He eventually got the neck fusion surgery basically when he decided to retire. And he was just like, well, I'm not going to get it till I'm not taking bumps anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the quickie ends up, he makes it another year. And then I think he did like the quick fix again. And then, I mean, it's hard to say he lasted a couple years after that until he got so addicted to painkillers that they had to fire him.
Yeah. Like, he still got it, I think, like every 2 years or so. He had to get a new neck surgery. Jeez. Until they finally disfused it, like right towards his retirement. And that's why he was so stiff when he made his comeback.
Yeah. I mean, that's what he was putting off, is he didn't want to end up not being able to wrestle the Kurt Angle match anymore.
And yeah, if you look at his last run and how much trouble he had just like with lateral movement of his head and stuff, that's because he had so much trauma to the nerves in his neck, so much built-in scar tissue, that even when they did the fusion, like, that's forever. Like, you can't clear that stuff out.
It's an absolute miracle that he's ended up, like, relatively okay after everything he put his body through.
Absolutely.
Like, it's incredible that he can walk and live a pretty normal life.
And that's always going to be the unfortunate subtext. Like, I told you to go and watch that Benoit Angle match, and it's a work of art. But you got to understand that in order to create it, this is what we know what happened to Benoit, and something almost equally tragic almost happened to Kurt. Like, because that's what they were putting their bodies through in order to get it to that point. Like, it's...
I mean, as a running theme of this show, just what these guys will go through, what they will put their bodies through for this business. Like, they're willing to risk paralysis. They're willing to risk death. Like, these guys bleed for this business. They die for this business. Some of them literally died in the ring.
And that's another reason why, like, whenever they do, like, who's going to grab the brass ring? Oh, wrestlers today, they're so interested in their own shit. Nobody wants to really bust their ass like they used to. Good. Thank God. Because that was too much, man. Like, it's not worth it.
No. And we will see the company start to dial things back after this. Like, as the toll of this era of wrestling becomes clear, they will start to realize, like, can't do chair shots to the head, can't do pile drivers, like, got to take concussions more seriously, got to take drug use more seriously. But unfortunately, it's too late, and there's a lot of tragedies, and there could have been a lot more. We had some real close calls here.
Unfortunately, yeah. And ultimately, like, that winds up being sort of like the secret story of this show. You mentioned that you really like the show, and I think as I watched it back, I did too. But like, my memory of the show is not a happy one. Like, it can't be. Like, everyone is so torn up. This is so the end of an era for all of these guys. That, like, and like the Booker T thing, like, this show puts such a bad taste in my mouth that it's hard to enjoy it for what it is if you just watch it match for match.
Yeah, I think this is one that, without context, it's a great show. Like, there's multiple what I'd consider 4-star plus matches on this show.
For sure.
Yeah, when you view it in a broader context, there's a lot of things wrong with this company, both kind of creatively and then in a bigger picture sense.
And a lot of that is going to come to light when we get to our show next week, because the
WrestleMania
whole
20.
fucking thing, it's going to look way different 1 year from now.
Yeah. And then, yeah, I mean, WrestleMania 20 at the time was a triumph, and a few years later, we'd see it as a great tragedy.
It's going to be a while before it's anything but tragedy, guys.
Yeah. I mean, this, I'm sure, is our longest show ever. We've been talking for hours and hours at this point. It's 3:00 in the morning. And next week is going to be even longer. One, because WrestleMania 20 is a 5-hour show. I don't know who looked at WrestleMania and said that needs to be an hour longer, but somebody did. And also, it's just real meaty, as we have, the incredible triumph for Chris Benoit and Eddie Guerrero, and the tragedies that their lives would ultimately end in. Last hurrah for The Rock. The end of the road for Brock Lesnar's first WWE run, Goldberg's first WWE run.
The formation of Evolution, the rise of Eddie Guerrero, like...
incredibly loaded card. Kurt Angle's career once again at the crossroads. The Undertaker going back to the dead man gimmick.
The Jericho, Christian, Lita, Trish storyline, which is one of the best storylines they've ever done.
The return to the Hall of Fame, all the history of WrestleMania at Madison Square Garden. I mean, an incredibly loaded show. I can't wait to talk about it.
We are fully prepared for that show to be a 2-parter. Just understand, we will release both parts on the same week. We just really don't want to be the kind of podcast that gives you a 3-hour podcast. We really don't want to do that.
Yeah. Whew. All right. Any final thoughts on WrestleMania 19? This was a heavy one.
I'm exhausted.
Just talking about it. I feel like I just wrestled in the main event.
Yeah, Jesus Christ. I am very, very, very excited for next week. Check the Patreon, by the way, guys, because we have a new thing up there that is our State of the Wrestling. State of the Wrestling World. We definitely want you guys to check that out. That was the one for January. We're going to have another one up for February as we proceed in to all the wonderful things that there are.
All right. Thank you for listening. We'll see you again next time for WrestleMania 20.